This video is brought to you by the 3-Minute Board Game patrons. Keep us independent by supporting us on Patreon. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Memoir 44 in about 3 minutes. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 players, playing time is short, and it's a pretty simple game. It's World War II, 1944, and the Allies have landed in Normandy. Can they liberate France and drive into the heart of Nazi Germany? Each game is a scenario with its own unique rules, but normally the winner is the player to gain a set amount of medals first. You gain medals by claiming them from the board, and you can also gain medals by wiping out enemy units. Dice. Special 6-sided dice are used in the game. Card management. You'll have a hand of order cards to play. Player turn. Select a mission to play and determine who will play the Axis and Allies. Each scenario has special rules, conditions of victory, and a hand limit for each player. Draw that many cards to your hand. You will start your turn by choosing an order to play. Note that the board is split into 3 sections. From your perspective, this is left, center, and right. Hexes that are bisected by the section lines are considered to be in both sections. Here we play this card, allowing us to order 3 units in the center. We announce which units we will order, selecting these 3 infantry units. Now the board has terrain on it we need to consider. Most terrain provides cover from attack, so we move our first unit into the hedgerow beside it. Infantry can move 0, 1, or 2 spaces, but if they move 2 spaces, they cannot shoot. Note that a unit consists of multiple models, but they are moved as one group. Once units have moved, they may attack. If you are adjacent to an enemy unit and can attack, you must attack an adjacent unit. Only this unit can attack this round, so we check the infantry attack reference, which says 2 hexes away means we roll 2 dice. But this Axis unit is in a hedgerow, so we further reduce that to 1 die. We roll that die and get an infantry symbol, which removes 1 infantry model. Once the last model in a unit is removed, place it here. In a later turn, we order a tank unit to move. They can move 3 hexes and still attack. You cannot move through other units though. Tanks have 3 attack, but that's reduced to 1 die by the hedgerow. They roll this symbol, which would hit a tank, but not infantry. The infantry unit here has 2 dice, and rolls a grenade and a retreat. Grenades hit any types of units, and retreat makes them fall back 1 hex. The allied infantry unit, because it attacked an adjacent unit, can follow up. If a unit is forced to retreat and cannot move towards its home line, it loses 1 unit per retreat die. Tanks are very effective in open terrain, and if they defeat or force a retreat from an adjacent unit, they can follow up and make a second attack. Artillery is a 3rd unit, and it can move or shoot. If it shoots, it can fire over other units and terrain, something other units cannot do. So in this example, these units cannot see the Axis tanks, but these ones can. At the end of your turn, draw a replacement card, and greyback cards like these ones have unique rules. Just read each one and follow its instructions. Other missions will include different types of terrain, buildings, and obstacles. Why would you like this game? Memoir 44 does something quite remarkable, and that's be a war game that is not only incredibly easy to learn and accessible, but also great as a war game. So many war games fail to demonstrate an important part of armed conflict, and that is that communication is never perfect, and friction, confusion, and the fog of war can make even the simplest thing impossible. And Memoir 44's order system nails this ambiguity perfectly. You really need to hold the line on your left flank, but aren't getting the orders? Too bad. Scenarios are also not played to the last man, and end at the right time once it's clear who would win, without the grinding mop-up that happens in some games. As far as I'm concerned, this is the undisputed king of light war games. The best thing about this game is the order system. It's simple and brilliant. However, it is a war game and someone has to play the Nazis. This is one reason why I prefer to play each scenario twice, swapping sides, but I also get that that's distasteful for many. It's also a bit of a rabbit hole for expansions with all its extra content. If you like this system but not World War II, there are Ancients, US Civil War, and fantasy games that use the same core ideas. And for something more tanky, try World of Tanks. Memoir 44, Clausewitz for kids. Gold medal game. Kia ora koutou, and welcome to Earth in about 3 minutes. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 5 players, playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. It is said that no man is an island. Well, in this game you are. Can you cover your island in diverse flora, fauna, and features? The game ends after a player has completed a 4x4 grid of cards. Just play until everyone has had the same number of turns. The winner is the player with the most points, and you get these from tons of sources, including growing sprouts and trees. Just look for the leaf symbol. Card management. There are 7 different types of cards for you to manage. Action selection. When it is your turn, you will select 1 of 4 actions to take. Set collection. There are shared goals that require you to collect sets to score points. Player turn. Take a player board and your color marker and get an island, a climate, and an ecosystem card. These are double-sided, so choose which one you will use. Your island card will tell you how many cards to draw and how many to put in your compost pile, and how much soil to start with. Soil is the main currency of the game. The compost pile is here, and each card is worth a point. When you are the active player, you will take 1 of these 4 actions, and you will get the benefit listed at the top. Non-active players will get the bottom benefit. The red action lets you gain 5 soil and put 2 cards from the draw pile into your compost. Soil is kept in the middle of your board for later use. The green action lets you plant up to 2 cards. You place them onto your board, paying the cost at the top in soil. Cards must be placed adjacent to existing ones, but this can be diagonally. If a card has a black band ability, that triggers immediately. The green action also lets you draw 4 cards and choose one to keep. The blue action lets you gain 2 soil and plant 6 sprouts on cards. Sprouts are green cubes and go in the marked spaces. Sprouts are worth 1 point each, but can also be spent on some abilities like this red one here. The yellow action lets you grow 2 trunks or canopies on cards. The brown number shows the maximum height of a tree, and once complete, it is worth the points in the white leaf. Completed trees have a canopy placed on them. The yellow action also lets you draw 4 cards to keep. When a color action is taken, regardless of whether you are the active player or not, you may use all the matching colored powers on any cards in your tableau, and some cards are multicolored. Your island and climate also have abilities, so if yellow is the main action taken this round, you can discard 1 compost card to draw 2 cards to hand. At any time, you may play action cards for their effects. These cards are one-offs and have their own discard pile. If you complete one of the 4 central fauna goals on your turn, place a marker. Each player may score each of these brown goals once. The green ecosystem goals are scored at the end of the game. The first player to finish their 16 card tableau also claims 7 points by placing their marker here. Why would you like this game? Earth is an engine builder's delight as you start with an empty slate and can build a massively interconnected set of cards, effects, sprouts, and trees. It starts you off with an island and a climate card and tells you to make something happen. And there are so many ways to build an engine and so many different powers you can use. The card pool is unique and colossal, and I barely touched on just how many ways in this game there are to score points. And it is a game that makes you feel clever when you place something in the right way or chain effects together. I think Earth will suffer at higher player counts, so recommend it for 2 or 3 players. Hopefully players who can keep the pace of the game going. The best thing about this game is chaining a bunch of card effects. Feels good. However, Earth feels very loose and chaotic, and with a massive variety of cards and so many ways to score points, it assaults you with information. Earth might be the worst game ever made for anyone with bad analysis paralysis. And while it is a big open sandbox to build an engine in, that openness comes at the cost of tightness, and it can feel very swingy as a result. For a cooperative engine builder, try Daybreak. And for something tighter, try Ark Nova. Earth. It's dirty fun. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the notification button, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Kyoto, and welcome to Jaipur in about 3 minutes. There is no solo mode. It's a game for 2 players, playing time is short, and it's a pretty simple game. You are a pair of dueling merchants in Jaipur, Rajasthan, part of modern-day India. Can you beat your rival in head-to-head commerce and become the most respected merchant in the land? A round of Jaipur ends once you cannot replace a card in the central market. You then total up your gold, and the highest amount wins the round. A match of Jaipur goes to the first player to win 2 rounds. Drafting. You will draft cards from a central display. Set collection. Collecting and selling sets of goods is the way to score points. Push your luck. Whether you sell early or try to build bigger sets is the key to the game. Player turn. Take all the 6 different colored tokens and arrange them from largest value to smallest. Then stack them in piles with the largest value on top. Then get the sets of 3, 4, and 5 set markers and shuffle them up. And grab the most camels token and the 3 favor tokens. In between the 2 players, deal out 3 camels and 2 other cards. Then deal each player 5 cards. Each player places any camels they were dealt to the side. This is referred to as their herd. On your turn, you may either acquire cards or sell them. If you acquire cards, you may choose to take 1 card. Just take it to your hand from the central display and replace it with 1 from the deck. You may choose to take all the camels from the display to your herd, replacing them with cards from the deck. And you may draft multiple cards, but only if you swap them for either cards from your hand or camels from your herd. You may sell cards from your hand instead of acquiring new ones. If you sell a single card, you get the top token from that pile. Gold may only be sold in sets of 2 or more. The same is true for diamonds as well as silver. If you sell 3 or more of a set at once, you gain a token from that matching set pile. You also gain a token for every single card you sell. The round ends once someone takes a card from the middle and there is no card left in the deck to replace it. Any cards left over in your hand are worth nothing. The player with the most camels in their herd gains the camel bonus token. Then flip over all your tokens and count up their value. The player with the highest number wins a favor token, and if this is their second favor token, the game is over. Otherwise, reset the game and play another round. Why would you like this game? Jaipur is many things, but first and foremost, I think it's a brilliant game for couples. You can set it up on the dinner table and just blast through a game and have fun with it. And it's competitive without being mean in any way. I also love that it packs away into a very small and tidy box that travels well. so it would be good as something to play while on holiday. The push your luck element in the game is what makes it tick though. Do you sell early to get the high value points, or wait to get big sets for the set bonuses? There's a fair bit of card counting and memory work here as well, as knowing the odds and size of the sets lets you make better decisions. All up, what a great way to spend half an hour for 2 players. The best thing about this game is how every card is useful in some way. It's understanding their situational value that's most important. However, this is a 2-player game and it works at no other player count. Counting up the victory points and then resetting after each round does take a bit of time, especially as you need to do a really serious shuffle to stop the cards from clumping into sets. For another 2-player game, try 7 Wonders Duel. And for a simple game with more players, try Century Golem. Jaipur. It's a gem. Kia ora Kyoto, and welcome to Cascadia in about 3 minutes. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is short, and it's a reasonably simple game. You are building a habitat in the northwest of the Americas. Can you build the best map and populate it with happy animals? The game ends once the pile of terrain hexes has run out. The winner is the player with the most points, and you get these from arranging animal tokens in certain ways, and from having large connected sets of the same habitat, like this forest here. Drafting. Each round you would draft 1 habitat tile and 1 animal token. Tile placement. You'll place your drafted tiles and tokens onto your own board. Set collection. The key to winning is collecting sets of animals and habitats. Player turn. Grab all the land tiles and turn them face down, and if playing with less than 4 players, return some to the box. Then grab the 5 different animal scoring card piles, shuffle them, and deal out 1 card for each animal type. This will show the special scoring rules for each animal token in this game. Each player will start with 1 3-hex tile like this. Each hex has 1 or 2 habitat tiles on it, and there are 5 different habitat types. Each tile also has 1 to 3 places where you can place an animal token. On your turn, you will draft a set from the display. Take the habitat tile and the animal token opposite it. Replace the habitat tile from the draw pile and the animal token from the bag. Let's draft this bear and matching tile. Place the habitat tile down on your board connected by at least 1 edge to an existing tile. Then place the animal token you took onto a habitat that matches that animal. It does not need to be the same tile you drafted. Let's draft this bear and the matching mountain. Some habitats have only 1 habitat type and 1 animal on them. If you place the right animal in this habitat, you gain a pine cone to use later. We now replace our drafted tiles, and there are 3 foxes in the display. The active player may choose to remove those 3 foxes for free and redraw from the bag. They redraw, and now there are 3 elk. They can only refresh like this once per turn, so we can't clear the elk. They draft the bear. Now there are 4 elk. There is an immediate wipe of the tokens and new animals are drawn. Pine cones can be spent to wipe any number of animal tokens and draw a new set from the bag. You may also spend 1 to draft a different tile and token combination. How you place your animals will have a big impact on scoring. Here our 2 bears will score us points, as they are currently together while not touching any other bears. If we place this bird token here, you can see it scores points if no other birds are adjacent, which means if we place here to get the pine cone, neither will score points. Note, if you draft a token and have no place to put it, it is discarded back to the token bag. Once all tiles have been drafted, each player should hopefully have 20 animals on 20 tiles plus your starter tile. Then score each animal card. Here we want elk in a hex. We have 4 of them, so get 12 points. Score each of the 5 animal cards. Now let's clear the board of tokens to better see the habitats. For each habitat, score 1 point for the biggest continuous group of tiles you have, so 6 forests here. The player with the largest group of each habitat type will also score extra points. Why would you like this game? Cascadia is in many ways a perfect game. It has very simple and easy to teach rules, the rounds are not complex, and just about anyone can play it. Yet every decision you make is meaningful, and the game gives you a sense of progress throughout. Add to that the very pleasant art style and approachable and wholesome theme, and you have something that can fit into just about any game group, while also being perfect for couples. There are 4 versions of each of the 5 scoring cards, so the game will have a little shake up each time you play it. All up, a wonderfully pleasant abstract game I can recommend to just about anyone. The best thing about this game is the sense of progress you have while playing. I love how your area organically grows. However, while Cascadia is an excellent drafting game, I never quite got the same level of excitement or tension that I have in some other games like this. For example, Calico by the same publisher. Cascadia is perfectly pleasant, but I kinda wish it was a little nastier. For something a bit tighter and meaner, try Calico. And for a different take on the same concept, try Harmonies. Cascadia, carefully collecting critters. Gold medal game. Kia ora Kyoto, and welcome to Mythwind in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players. Playing time is infinite, and it's a moderately complex game. In this cozy game, you're all working together to build a village in the Valley of Mythwind. The game is not won or lost and lasts as long as you want it to continue. However, it is broken down into seasons, each consisting of 9 rounds. In every season, you will get an objective card to complete. Worker placement. Each day you will place your worker in an exclusive location and gain the associated benefits. Character development. Both the town and your characters will change and improve during the game. Player turn. Each player grabs one of the 4 character boards. Each day begins with drawing a weather card. If that card has a symbol on it, draw an event from the event deck and resolve it immediately. Do not discard weather cards. If the last 3 cards on the weather display match one of the patterns on the season tile, resolve that effect. Here that is to advance the build order. You do that again because the same symbol is on the revealed weather card. Different seasons have different effects. Each player chooses a day action to take by placing their worker on a location. The development action lets us spend money to increase one of the village resource tracks here. The cost is different for each resource and for each character. You may also spend 5 coins to clear a spot on the map, gaining the resource on the back of the card. You may construct buildings here, paying the cost and resources based on player count. Each time this symbol is triggered, move the building up 1 slot until it leaves the track. Then place it in an available space or on top of another building. Many buildings are locations you can take actions in. You can also hire workers, which are these 2 dice here. You may take 1 die for 2 coins or 2 dice for 5 coins. Place them into your player board. The final spot is to adventure. Here you draw an adventure card, read it, and resolve its effects. Once all day actions are done, you may take player actions on your board. Let's use the farmer as an example. There are 5 possible actions shown here. You may only do the actions that align with either the blue sprites or orange townsfolk, and that alignment is based on where you placed your worker. We take a purple tent action to flip over a crop tile to its ready side. We also have 2 worker dice we can use. The orange worker takes a clear action to remove overgrowth, and the blue sprite takes a plant action to plant new crops. Each action costs a pip from the die. The blue sprite goes back to our tray, and the orange townsfolk goes back to the board and is re-rolled. Each of the characters has completely different player turn rules, so to find out more about each character, check out Board Game Coffee's excellent How to Play series, and you can find that link in the video description below. Finally, return all workers to their player boards and start a new day. Why would you like this game? Straight up, Mythwind is a game that didn't connect with me personally, but I think I know who the game is for, and it's for either solo gamers or couples who want a nice, low-stress, low-drama activity to do. And if you get into it, there's tons of content to work through here, as well as unlockables. And if you set yourself personal goals and milestones, I can see the game being rewarding in its own way. It has a huge tech tree of different buildings, which allow you to make your own unique village. And there's also the different characters to master. The ranger in particular is quite fun. The best thing about this game is its presentation. It looks good, is very well put together, and packs away quickly. However, if this is a cozy game, then cozy games are not for me. I felt the pace of the game was glacial, and that the whole experience was one slow grind towards the next thing, which would allow me to get the next thing, and so on and so on. There was just no tension or drama or anything, just a repeatable process one could do forever. And it's not like the character variety does anything fun. The crafter doesn't make tools for the farmer or goods for the merchant. Everything is so self-contained and sterile. For another take on cozy games, try Stardew Valley. And for a competitive game with similar ideas, try Merchant's Cove. Mythwind, too comfy for me.
You got me all the way back here to pass you the remote control?
Well, I too love. We just got comfy.
Kyoto and welcome to Wormspan in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 5 players. Playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. You are a dragonologist looking to study a wide variety of dragon kind. Can you excavate homes for them, entice them to live there, and then observe them in their natural habitat? The game lasts for 4 full rounds of play with a refresh phase in between each round. The winner is the player with the most points at the end of the game, and you get them from many different sources. Just look for the dragon tail symbol. Drafting. There are cards in a central display to draft. Card management. Dragon and lair cards are key to this game. Engine building. Building combos with your dragons is super important. Player turn. Each game will have 4 randomly determined goals that are scored at the end of their matching round. There is also a dragon guild board which can have any of the guilds on it. You then draw 3 of each type of card and keep 4 total, and take any 3 resources. Players will start each round with 6 silver coins and 1 egg. Every action in the game uses at least 1 silver coin. On your turn you will take one of these 3 actions and then pass to the next player. But first, if you ever trigger this symbol, it advances your marker on the Dragon Guild 1 space, granting you each reward shown that you go past. At the bottom of the board, you will place one of your markers to score it, and if you go all the way around the board, you will claim one of the other spots. Also, if you are ever asked to claim a card via these symbols, you can either take one of the 3 face-up cards or draw from the deck. Only replace them at the end of your turn. Now back to the 3 actions, starting with Excavate. This costs 1 silver and allows you to place one of your lair cards into an empty spot. You gain the placement bonus immediately. Here that's 1 meat and 1 milk. The further right you go, you may also have to pay an egg cost as well. Entice lets you recruit dragons, and you must have a lair for them to live in. Thankfully, you start with the first lair in each row open. Each dragon has a name, victory points, egg limit, personality, special bonus, which caves they'll live in, and their cost to entice. Remember, it costs 1 silver as well. Place the dragon into the cave and gain any placement bonuses on the card. Let's place down a second dragon and do an explore action. Explore can be done up to 3 times per cave, and costs increase as shown here. Take your meeple and move it left to right, gaining any benefits shown below the Explorer icon, including on any dragons that have that symbol. Once you reach one of these stop signs, your Explore action is over. As mentioned, you can explore again next turn with increased costs. The other two types of dragon bonuses are end of round cards that trigger at the end of each round, and endgame cards that trigger for scoring. Some cards let you tuck cards beneath them. Tucked cards are worth 1 point at game end, and other cards let you cache resources on them. Those are also worth 1 point. Note you can earn more than 6 silver and can save them between turns if you wish by passing early. And at any time you can convert any 2 resources to one of another. Why would you like this game? Wingspan never really did it for me. I thought it was a good enough game, but there were a few niggles with it and it just didn't click with me at all. Wingspan deals with all of my Wingspan issues bar one, and as a result, it's a game I'm far more interested in playing. And that's because it really feels like a tight engine building game where I'm trying to cram in as much points and moves as possible before the game ends. Fundamentally, you are choosing between 1 to 3 actions each turn, and the complexity of the game is organically added as you add in more components. The Dragon Guild system is a great new addition, as is the Neato guidebook to all the dragons. I don't think Wormspan is any more complex than Wingspan, and therefore recommend it to pretty much any audience. Best thing about this game is the artwork. Even the back of the boards are pretty. However, the one hangover issue here for me is that with only 3 cards in the draft pool and a relatively low number seen throughout the game, combined with all the cards being unique, you can sometimes luck into perfect combos and other times not. It's the lack of seen cards in what is fundamentally an engine building game that remains my last real gripe about it. For another cute dragon engine building game, try Flamecraft. And for the original Wingspan, check out our review here. Wormspan, Gold Dragon game. Kyoto, and welcome to Tokaido in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. Matsuri expansion as well. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 to 5 players, playing time is short, and it's a pretty simple game. It is the Edo period in Japan, and you are a traveler setting out from Kyoto to Edo on the Tokaido Road. Will you have the most pleasant journey possible? The game ends once all players have arrived at the final inn. The winner is the player with the most journey points, which you get from a bunch of sources. Just look for the knapsack. Action selection. Each turn you will move to a location further down the road. Variable player powers. Each traveler has unique powers, and the expansion contains even more travelers. Player turn. Select the player color in one of the characters to play as. Slot your color marker into the character board. Place your scoring marker at the top of the track and randomly place your meeple and all others on the start like so. Each player also claims starting coins shown on the top right of their board. The player at the back of the line takes their turn. They may place their meeple in any location on the road between the first space and the inn. We choose to place here and take the pink encounter. More on that later, but once we resolve the encounter, it will be the next player's turn. That's the blue player as their last. They move ahead. You may only place in off-road locations like this in 4 and 5 player games. Play proceeds with the last player moving and resolving their location. The location effects are, at the black shop you draw 3 item cards and can buy any number of them for the coin cost shown. These score points by collecting sets with different types of items. The yellow farm gives you 3 coins as you help the farmer out with manual labor. These 3 locations represent 3 different panoramas. When you land at one, you claim the first card in the sequence. The 3 different panoramas have different lengths, and you may only complete one of each, but the first player to complete each one gains a bonus card. The teal hot spring location has you draw a card with either 2 or 3 points. The red temple space makes you donate 1, 2 or 3 coins to the temple. At the end of the game, the player who donated the most will score more points as shown here, and you must have at least 1 coin to stop at the temple. The pink encounter location lets you draw an encounter card. These encounter cards have different effects, including gaining points or money. Each player must stop once they reach the inn, and you have to wait for all other players to catch up. Then deal out food cards equal to the number of players plus 1. The first player starts food purchasing. They are all worth 6 points and have different costs, and you may not buy a card you already got at a previous inn, and you don't have to buy a food card. Some player abilities, like this one here, trigger at inns. With the Matsuri expansion, you would also resolve an event as well. This one would trigger endgame goal scoring immediately, and those endgame goals are having the most encounters, the most expensive food, the most items, and the most hot spring cards. Once everyone is eaten, the last player starts the next leg of the journey. Why would you like this game? There are very few games where my opinion of them oscillates so wildly as Tokaido. Some days I barely consider it a game, and other times I consider it one of the most delightful and pleasant gaming experiences available. And that's because it's both these things. And on the positive side, it's a gorgeous looking game, but its delightfulness is rooted in what you're doing. You're moving down the road, taking in the scenery, visiting hot balls, buying souvenirs and eating donburi. And that's just pleasant. And while it's a competitive game, you're really competing over who had the most pleasant trip. And that makes it the sort of game pretty much anyone can find fun and relaxing. And it is a very easy recommendation for family game night. The best thing about this game is completing the panoramas. It's just a lovely little thing to do. However, a brain-melting strategy game this is not. In fact, most of the time you will just move to the next available space because every space offers something, and taking more actions is almost always better than rushing down the path. It's just not a game you can take too seriously. For another game with painting panoramas, try Eternal Palace. And for another cute game about Japan, try Takanoko. Kyoto. It's an actual cozy game. Kia ora Kyoto, and welcome to The Thing, Infection at Outpost 31 in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 4 to 8 players, playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. It's Antarctica, and it's the 1980s. A life form able to mimic any living thing is loose at the base. You know you are human, but who else is? The game has 2 teams, human and imitation. You may start off human and become an imitation later. The imitations win if there are too many failed tests or destroyed rooms. The humans win if they clear all 3 sectors of the board and only humans escape on the final chopper. If any of those escaping players are imitations, the humans lose. Secret orders. Each turn there is a mission and you add cards to it secretly. Dice. Conflict is resolved using 6-sided dice. Player turn. Each player picks a character, ensuring that the 3 color groups stay balanced. Then deal out human and imitation cards as shown here based on player count, and build the blood sample deck and put it on the board. Keep your blood sample card hidden from the other players. Each round starts with a new player becoming captain. Each character has a unique power that can only be used while they are captain. Start by drawing a mission card. It will tell you how many players you need on your team, what divisions they must be from, and how you win the challenge. Pick a room to investigate and take those models and move them there. If the room has power out, discard a flashlight. The players left behind can discard a card and draw a replacement. They may also put out fires with a fire extinguisher. Each player in the mission hands a card in face down. The captain shuffles those cards and looks at them. If a sabotage is revealed, resolve it immediately. The captain may also discard 1 non-sabotage card to draw the top card from the draw pile. Then follow the instructions on your mission card. Here that is to reveal 3 random cards looking for a gun. If you lost the mission, advance the computer marker 1 step and resolve the effect shown there. If you pass, flip over the token in the room. Some are discarded, some are equipment cards, which the captain takes, and others are a thing. Place any equipment markers here. If it is a thing, look up what roll is needed to beat it. Then all players in the mission group add in a card, but now you're looking at the dice values at the bottom. Roll that many dice and try to defeat the thing. If you succeed, place the thing marker here. Once you have the item and things for one sector, you may move on to the next one. If you fail to defeat the thing, pick up all room markers for that sector and replace them down. Smoking rooms catch fire and on-fire rooms are destroyed. Then everyone returns to the rec room and the captain marker is passed along. Between each sector you will have an assimilation. Deal everyone in the room a card from the blood sample deck. If it is human, return it to the blood sample deck. If it is imitation, return your human card instead. You have been assimilated. And if you end up with 2 imitation cards, return 1. Keep this secret from all other players. Why would you like this game? The Thing is a fascinating social deduction game because it straddles the time and complexity bridge between party games like Coup and longer games like Battlestar Galactica and Dead of Winter. As a result, it occupies a wonderful niche in the hidden traded genre. It also scales up very well, and one could make a good case for it being best at 7 or 8 players. Turns move quickly, and there is always a heap of suspicion floating around, especially when it's your turn to be captain. It's also a wonderfully accurate adaptation of the 1982 film, which is one of my absolute faves. All up, I'd recommend this to people who love social deduction games and have the group size to play it. Best thing about this game is being an imitation, dropping this card into an important challenge and then blaming everyone else. However, playing as the humans takes a bit more experience, so it will take a few plays before the game feels balanced. And sometimes, the dice and card flips can be cruel and capricious. Not a game for people who can't handle the occasional bit of brutally bad luck. For a shorter game like this, check out either Coup or The Resistance. And for something heavier, try Battlestar Galactica or its remake Unfathomable. The Thing, it's no imitation. Kia ora Kyoto, and welcome to Istan Buul the Dice Game in about 3 minutes. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 to 4 players, playing time is short, and it's a reasonably simple game. You are a merchant working in Istanbul, and your goal is to become rather wealthy by collecting gemstones. Can you send your dice-shaped apprentices out into the market to find the best bargains? The game ends once a player has gained their 5th gemstone for 4 players, or 6 gemstones for 2 or 3. You trade in goods and money for gemstones on the main board. Dice. Each turn you'll roll these special dice and use them to take actions. Action selection. You'll spend dice to take actions from this list here. Set collection. Collecting sets of goods is the key to winning the game. Player turn. Place the main board in the middle of the table, then place red gem markers on each of the 6 different tracks around the board, ensuring that the first space on each track is left clear. Then place 1 gem on the bottom track of the board for each player in the game. Then put out 6 of these mosque upgrade tiles where everyone can see them. When it is your turn, you will roll 5 dice, but let's look at their 6 sides first. These 4 sides correspond to one of the good types. There is a 5th type of good, shown with this box icon, which can be used as a wild card. The top right die represents money and has 2 coin icons on it, while the final icon represents bizarre cards. Roll your dice. You may also spend a crystal to reroll any of them, and you may spend more than 1 crystal on your turn. You'll start the game with some crystals based on player order. Take your dice and look at this wonderfully useful reference chart, because it will tell you what actions you can take, but you may only take 2 actions a turn. Starting from the top and working down. 2 like dice for 1 matching colored good, 2 unlike dice for 1 crystal, 3 unlike dice for 1 wildcard resource, and 1 of each resource type for any combination of 2 trade goods. You may spend any number of money dice for 2 coins per die spent, and draw as many bizarre cards as this die type, and choose 1 to resolve. Bizarre cards have things only you can do, and things everyone else can do on them, so we choose this one. You can buy the mosque tiles paying their cost above. This one gives you 3 money at the start of each of your turns as income. This one draws a bizarre card as income, and this one crystal as income. This tile means when you take the money action, you also get 1 matching good, while this tile here gives you a 3rd action on your round. The final type of upgrade gives you, and only you, an extra die to roll. Once you have collected 4 of these mosque tiles, gain a gem from here. You may do this only once. The goal of the game is those gems, and you get them by paying the cost shown on a track. The first one here costs 10 coins, but the last one will cost 20. The tracks at the top use types of goods, so 4 green goods here, but you may use dice and goods in any working combination to pay for them. And the final track needs 1 of each good, then 1 more good for each space on the path. Once you have taken your actions, it's the next player's go with the dice. Why would you like this game? Istan Buul, the dice game, sets up in seconds and gets people right into the action. The rules teach takes a few minutes more, but this is an easy game to get people playing. The dice manipulation is simple and fun and always leaves you with a sense of progress, and I really dig how much of the game is about when you pivot out of gaining capabilities and try to push to the end to win. Because if you go hard on gems immediately, you will lose. But equally, you can spend all your game powering up and buying upgrades and lose badly. The pivotal moment in the game is knowing when you can go for broke and start scoring without being overtaken. This should be a hit as a shorter game on game night or one for the family. Oh, best thing about this game is how it accelerates to its finale. However, it's a pretty basic dice chucking set collection game. That's about all I've got to say about it negatively. It's pretty good for what it is, but it's not super deep or too challenging. For another fast-paced game, try Splendor. And if you love collecting gemstones, try Century Golem Edition. Istan Buul, not Constantinople. You were all thinking it. Kyoto, and welcome to Dorf Romantic in about 3 minutes. It has a solo mode, it's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is medium, and it's a pretty simple game. You and your friends are working together to build a lovely village. Can you place towns, forests, fields, trains, and rivers in the best possible way? The game ends once you have taken all the possible tiles and played them into one big connected map on the table. There is no winner. The game is played as a team, and your goal is to beat your previous high scores. Tile placement. Each turn you will draw a tile and place it into your village. Set collection. Placing tiles in groups that connect is how you score points. Legacy. After you score your game, you'll advance on this track and unlock new content for the game. Player turn. Take all the tiles with the speech bubbles on them, these are tasks, and all but 3 of the landscape tiles. They're the ones with the windmill symbol. Each turn, a player will draw from one of these stacks and place a tile onto the table. The first 3 tiles drawn in the game must come from the task pile. Each task tile is randomly allocated a task marker of the matching color with a number on it. This shows a task you can complete to get victory points. Let's look at the yellow 4. Here we place 4 tiles where the yellow grain sections of the tiles connect. And because we have placed exactly 4 of these tiles, we remove the yellow task and score it. We then place a flag tile. A flag tile will score 1 point for every matching colored tile it connects to at the end of the game, as long as its area is completely closed off. But we now draw a yellow 5 task. If we place this connected to the existing yellow tiles, it would make 6 connected tiles. That would allow us to score the yellow 6 task, but we would have to discard the yellow 5 task without scoring it. So instead, we place over here and aim to create a separate group of 5 yellow tiles so we can score it. You can place down a task tile and automatically score it. So here we place this tile and score both connected 6 tasks. As we mentioned, the flag won't score unless we close that area off completely, with no yellow areas bordering the edge of the map. We do that here, and this would be worth 13 points at the end of the game. There are also green forest tiles and terracotta village tiles that are scored the same way. Trains and rivers must be connected in a way that allows the train or river to continue. This would be an illegal placement as it blocks off the river, and this would also be illegal as it blocks off the train. Trains and rivers can have natural termination points like this, however. Rivers and trains are scored with your longest route for each of them at the end of the game. So here the river is 11 spaces long and the train much longer. Once you have totaled your score, check this reference chart. Mark down your score and then advance along the tracks here, unlocking any boxes and awards you come to. There are 5 boxes of additional content for you to unlock, and these will add in a bunch of ways to score more points. Why would you like this game? Dorfromantik is the tabletop version of one of the most popular cozy games of the last few years, one that Steph and I have played a fair bit. This is one board game adaptation that captures the feel of the computer game remarkably well. The choice to make it a cooperative or solo game was the correct one here, and it creates a real pleasant vibe of just building out the village while discussing the best ways to score points. All up, an excellent family-friendly game that gets better the more you play it, and each game looks different. The best thing about this game is that all the legacy components can be reset, and the game isn't binned once it's played through. However, Captain Shady Pants can make this game a misery by barking orders at everyone where to place their tiles. You can solve that particular issue by not playing with them. And the lack of a win condition and relying on beating your own score will not be for everyone, nor will the legacy system of adding in new components all the time. For competitive village building, check out Hamlet. And if you just want to build a hex city all to yourself, try Suburbia. Dorfromantik. Different Dorf, different romantic. Kia ora koutou, and welcome to Halls of Higra in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. This is a solo-only game. Its playing time is long, and it's a rather complex game. It's April 1940. Norway is being invaded by the Nazis. In the north of the country, you remember an old abandoned fortress exists. Can you make it ready and hold back the invaders? The game lasts for 11 turns and ends with a last stand. There are also 4 stages of the game, starting with mobilization and moving through the siege. You win the game if enough defenders survive the last stand, and you lose if the surrender track advances here. Action programming. You place all your tokens onto the board and then resolve their actions. Player turn. Each turn will start with drawing an event card from the matching stage deck shown here. The card shows the weather and then has instructions to carry out. This one also adds purple dart tokens to the bag, matching the number here. You then recruit. You may draw up to 4 discs from the bag one at a time, stopping whenever you want. If you draw all 4 recruits, keep them all. But if you ever draw a purple token, you must choose only one recruit to keep. If you draw a purple first, recruit the next token drawn. Recruits go to your active pool. On all turns except the first, you will have tired tokens. You may spend supplies to move them to ready. The amount moved per supply is shown here and goes down as the siege progresses. Now you can place your tokens on the board. Each circle is an action place. One token here will resolve this action once. The green token is doubly effective here as shown by this symbol, and this space requires 2 tokens. The black commander token cannot be used on any of these actions. Once you have placed all the tokens you wish, you resolve them in this order. Opening a new supply route lets you place 3 of the remaining supply tokens onto the supply board. Negotiate lets us lower fear or doubt by 1. Once an action is resolved, place the tokens in the tired spot here. Supply runs are next, with each new token being added to the bottom. Tokens can then move as fast as the weather shows in spaces, one less if they have a supply marker. Token in camps are safe, and soldier tokens can engage the German patrols and possibly beat them. Each supply token returned to the fort adds 2 supplies plus its bonus. Here that's another supply. Morale also goes up 1 step. Shoveling snow moves this marker, which can reveal new one-off bonuses or hidden rooms. Those rooms are placed in their spots on the board with a damage token. Repair lets you remove damage, which is how you make the artillery and other rooms work, as well as repair damage from enemy attacks. Then resolve the infirmary with patients and beds improving and those in the waiting area getting worse. Then based on where the morale token is, draw and resolve cards and then reset that track. On turn 4, flip this board over and resolve enemy attacks with dice rolls. The game gets more involved and deadly as the siege progresses, and the Germans will also recruit artillery and deploy bombers. Survive as long as you can. Why would you like this game? Halls of Higra is not your normal war game. It deals with logistics, planning, managing scarcity, and digging more than it does actual fighting. It's the most Eurogamey war game I have ever played, which surprisingly gives it an incredibly holistic view of armed conflict. Game-wise, it's all about deciding how to spend your limited resources each turn, but unlike most games on the market, in Halls of Higra your situation keeps deteriorating. By the time the siege is on properly, you'll be wondering if you have enough supplies and people to make it to next turn, let alone the end of the game. It's probably the best siege game I played, and the stages really feel like the Germans are constantly upping the pressure. I'd recommend it to any solo gamer who wants a real challenge, as it's a deep and unforgiving game that really makes you think. The best thing about this game is how it evolves. Your day 9 concerns are so different from the ones you had on day 1. However, war is not a theme for everyone, and I get that. And this particular scenario is a grim one, because the victory condition isn't to win, it's to surrender with dignity, and even that's staggeringly hard to do. I personally have not won a game yet after numerous attempts. For a different type of accessible solo war game, try Pavlov's House. And for a game about civilians in war, Try this war of mine. Halls of Higra. Gandalf ain't coming this time. Gold medal game. Kia ora Kyoto and welcome to Storm Raiders in about 3 minutes. Deluxe edition prototype used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players. Playing time is medium and it's a moderately complex game. There's an ancient storm here blowing through the ruins of the old world, leaving debris and salvage in its wake. Can you brave the storm for the riches and glory it brings? The game ends after 6 rounds tracked here, with each player taking 2 actions per round. The winner is the player with the most points, and you mostly get those from completing deliveries and from increasing your scoring dials and collecting their matching components. Damage also loses you lots of points. Drafting. Each round you will draft 1 die from the central display. Variable player powers. Each raider and vehicle has unique powers. Contract fulfillment. There are contracts on the board for you to fulfill. Player turn. Each player takes a board and a raider. Adjust your 3 scoring dials based on the icons on your raider. Then take one of each vehicle type and place 1 damage on them, and get a starting crew card. Crew cards are flipped over when used. When it is your turn, you will draft a die. The dice color doesn't matter unless you have a specific power. To move, place that die on one of your vehicles. It must be a higher value than any die on that vehicle. You may then move that number of pips on the map along paths going through locations if you wish to. If you stop at a storm site, increase the dial matching that site by 1 step. Because we are using our trike, we can safely scavenge 2 goods from here. On our next turn, we draft a 2 and place it on our aircraft. This is because we want to travel this route and it has an aircraft marker on it. Aircraft can travel normal routes as well. There's a contract here, and we hand in those gathered resources, taking its token for 6 victory points and 1 medal. The third type of movement is with your submarine. You can only move between locations with sub symbols. You just need a die that equals or exceeds their combined values. Each vehicle takes damage from different actions. Picking up ammunition, which is a wildcard resource, damages all vehicles. The trike takes damage when you place a 5 or 6 on it. The aircraft takes damage if you pick up 2 goods at once or place a 6, and for the sub it's ammunition and 2 goods at once. If you earn a mod, it is placed to cover up one of these damage triggers. You may also take a rest action. Place a die and flip one of your crew cards back over. Then remove half the die's value in damage, and all dice equal or higher than its value. So high dice repair a lot, but remove few dice, and the reverse is true for lower dice. Then gain either a crew member, a medal, or a mod. The last die remaining in a round determines what direction and how far the storm moves. If the die is black, it follows the black arrow. Reverse if grey. The storm deposits resources in the area it moves through based on this chart, and any players in its path get hit for 1 damage to each vehicle. If you can't place a damage die, increase this slider. That shows what negative victory points each damage die is worth. At the end of each round, age up existing contracts and add new ones. Why would you like this game? Storm Raiders is a fantastic looking pick-up and delivery game with a fun and engaging central premise. The storm drops loads of resources, but it's also very dangerous to get close to. With 6 rounds and 2 actions, you only get 12 opportunities to do something in the game, and you have to make them count. Which is why you need to lean into the special powers your raider, vehicles, and crews get, and maximize every advantage you can gain there. And that's the Shem Phillips factor here. Storm Raiders looks like a fancy thematic game, but beneath its chrome, it's a tight action selection game about maximizing point scoring. And therefore, I'd recommend it to people who want a quick-paced action optimization game. The best thing about this game is the art direction and how it looks. Simply stunning. However, rest actions in this game can feel very strong, and that can be jarring. I also don't care that your special power is linked to the rest action and it's not an active thing. Also, for a game with only 12 actions, you end up doing a lot of suboptimal moves that just feel bad. And that's in no small part to how quickly the board state can change in between turns and how restricted movement is. I also expected a bit more in terms of customizing your vehicles throughout the game. For a different take on pickup and delivery, try Wasteland Express delivery service. And for more focused dice drafting, try Twa. Storm Raiders. No, not like that. Like this. Kia ora Kyoto and welcome to Fallout Shelter in about 3 minutes. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 to 4 players, playing time is short, and it's a pretty simple game. The Overseer is dead, and your vault is holding a competition on who will succeed them. Can you make your level of the vault the shiniest and best of all? The game ends once one player has built 6 rooms on their personal vault level. The winner is the player with the most happiness, and you get this from loads of places, like building rooms and killing mole rats. Worker placement. You'll place your workers on locations to get the associated benefits. Drafting. You'll select gear and rooms from open drafting pools. Dice. Dice are used to resolve conflict. Player turn. Set up the starting rooms on the top level of the vault as shown, and then 1 elevator for each player. Grab your 7 vault boys and choose 2 to keep, and put the rest aside for now. While they are modeled on the 7 special stats, the appearance of your vault boys has no gameplay impact. If you ever gain power, food, or water, those are tracked using green cubes here. You may only hold 6 of each type at once. On your turn, you'll place 1 Vault Boy on a location, paying any cost shown in red. Here that is 2 water. You will then gain the benefit shown above your Vault Boy. Here that is to refresh to 3 equipment cards and draw 1. It is now the next player's action, and they may place a Vault Boy at any other location. Here they gain 1 equipment card. This location gives the white player the first player marker, while these next 2 locations have high costs, but let those players recruit 1 of their 5 set-aside Vault Boys. Once all players have alternated placing Vault Boys, the round is over and you reclaim them. The white players' Vault Boys are on training spaces, so they reclaim them first to the luck spot and then to any slot along the top here. Vault Boys deployed from these slots will have advantages. Let's look at the basic resource rooms. Each slot here has a letter on it matching one of the special traits. Anyone can place in one of these slots and gain its basic benefit, so here 2 power. But if you place here from a matching special slot on your board, you gain double benefits. The elevator on your floor is where you can build rooms. Pick one of the 3 available rooms from the display. Pay the resource cost on the bottom right of the room. Place it connected to any of your existing rooms and gain 2 happiness. Anyone may now use these worker placement slots, but if someone uses your floor, you gain 1 resource of your choice. That's unless there's a threat on your level. At the start of each turn, roll 2d6 for each level of the vault, noting how each room at the top has a 2d6 result on it. If you roll a 7, nothing happens. If you roll the same number as a current threat, nothing happens. But if you roll a number matching an empty room, draw and place a threat. Some threats can be removed just by placing resources, while others require a combat roll. Succeed and all is well. Fail and your Vault Boy is wounded and knocked over. Equipment cards have a huge impact on combat. Wounded characters can only be placed in locations with this symbol, but that heals them up. Remember to recover all Vault Boys and remove resolve threats at the end of the round. Why would you like this game? Fallout Shelter is fine. It's a perfectly functional worker placement game that is primarily geared towards being an accessible game for fans of Fallout. The whole game packs away into a nice looking Vault-Tec lunchbox tin, which is both fun for fans of the game and actually quite sturdy. I really dig how the threat cards are transparent plastic so you can see the rooms behind them. It's a small thing, but it makes me smile. Gameplay wise, it's nothing to write home about, but it's perfectly serviceable. And definitely on the lower end of complexity, so would be good for more casually minded gamers. And overall, as a game for fans of Fallout, it does a pretty good job. The best thing about this game is blowing up the Deathclaw lurking in your water treatment plant. However, if Fallout means nothing to you, this game has little draw power. As I said, it's a perfectly fine introductory worker placement game, but that's about it really. The IP is the draw here. For another worker placement game, try Raiders of Scythia. And for the Fallout adventure game, check out our review here. Fallout Shelter, the board game of the app, not of the PC game or the show. Kyota Kyoto and welcome to Red Dust Rebellion in about 3 minutes. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is long, and it's a pretty damn complex game. 200 years after Mars was first colonized, tensions are brewing. Do the corporations from Earth have too much power? Should Mars have self-rule? And should it be terraformed? The fate of Mars is up to you. Each of the 4 factions has a different win condition. You only check to see if someone has won when a dust storm is drawn or at the end of the game. Area control. Controlling and influencing regions is the key to victory. Asymmetry. Each faction has different powers, units, and victory conditions. Player turn. The focal point of the game is this card deck. Draw 1 card and place it face up beside the deck. This is the current card. Then turn over the top card of the deck. This is the next card. Once the current card is resolved, move the next card over and reveal a new next card. At the start of the game, each faction will be eligible. Look at this row on the card. It shows which order the factions are eligible. We see the Corp player is first. They can choose one of these 3 options or they can pass. Place their marker on the option they picked and resolve it. The next player on the row of the card may choose to act, either taking the action following the Corp player or passing. Do this until both actions are taken or no one is eligible. Once both those actions are resolved, the players who acted are ineligible on the next card. If you picked event, look at the card and choose one of the 2 options on it and resolve it. Your faction sheet will list your 4 operations, and they generally boil down to choosing to recruit, move, locate the enemy, or attack. We are acting as the Red Dust player and want to do the rally operation. We can select any number of eligible spaces, but we'll just do 2 for this example. Following the rules for rally, we spend 1 resource per region and then convert 2 rebels into a base in Hella Chaos and recruit 4 rebels in Sharma. We can also increase opposition 1 step. Next up is the MG player, and they have a limited operation, which means they can only target 1 space. They select Sharma and move 4 troop cubes there. This flips 4 rebels over to their revealed side, which means they can be targeted for attacks. 2 cards later, an MG acts before Red Dust can hide its rebels, and they choose the attack operation. They remove 4 revealed rebels. The bases would be protected regardless of how many hits Blue did, because at least 1 rebel is hidden in the region. As this fight is in a city, Red can counterattack, revealing a rebel and rolling 2 dice. Each die equal or lower than the number of rebels removes 2 troops, and if the combined total is less than the total units in this fight, place a damage marker on the population track. Place a marker into the displaced population to represent the strain on life-giving infrastructure. Damage can be repaired and population rehoused, and you can even increase areas' population throughout the game. Each faction also has 3 special activities that can be used in conjunction with operations for powerful and characterful actions. On each event card is a flashpoint number. Move that track along that many spaces, and when it reaches the end, resolve a flashpoint round, which represents time advancing. Several things happen. Immigrants, supplies, and troops for the coin player come from Earth. Each flashpoint round moves them one closer to their destination. And the storms on Mars burn out and change, and any location under a storm cannot be targeted by an operation. The government and corp players compete for the attention of Earth government, and the right to use their forces and satellites, while Red Dust starts campaigns and rolling strikes against them. Finally, the Reclaimers break most of the game rules with a unique card system that lets them develop ongoing capabilities, substitute events with their own unique ones, and usurp the regular turn order by discarding cards. The Dust Storm phase is resolved once the Dust Storm becomes the current card, and it's when you check for victory, gain income, and redeploy forces. Just some quick notes from me. Red Dust Rebellion is long and it's complex, and it deals with some very serious themes. And as much as I love my own game, I can't recommend it to anyone who will find the complexity too much or the content too rough. That said, I tried my best to make it very grounded, and the game comes with a lot of background material. I hope you have as much fun exploring the game and setting as I did making it. Red Dust Rebellion is part of the coin series, like Cuba Libre here. Red Dust Rebellion. 7 years ago, it looked like this. Kia Kyoto, and welcome to Netrunner in about 3 minutes. Review copy used, along with my original tokens. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 players, playing time is medium, and it's a pretty complex game. It's the near future and corporations control the world. Individual hackers seek to block the corporate agendas, hoping to expose their crimes to the world. The game ends immediately once any player scores 7 or more points of agenda cards. The runner can also lose if they take damage when they have no cards in hand, and if the corp has to draw a card and cannot, they lose. Card management. Netrunner is entirely about playing cards. Asymmetry. The corp and runner players have different cards and rules. Deck construction. You can make unique decks out of a large pool of cards. Player turn. Each player takes their deck of cards, draws 5 of them, and gains 5 credits. The corp player sets up their faction cards, deck, and discard piles like so. They are referred to as HQ, R&D, and archives. The corp player starts their turn with a mandatory card draw. They then can take 3 more clicks of action shown here. It is 1 click to gain a card or a credit. It's 1 click to play an operation card from HQ to archives. You may install ice, which protects servers by placing them face down in front. Another action is to install cards in remote servers. Agendas and assets must be in their own server, but upgrades may share a server. The trick is, however, that you place these cards face down so the runner does not see them. Another action is to spend a credit to advance a card. You may score an agenda once it has advancement tokens equal or above the number on its top right, and you can res cards in a server to make use of them, paying the cost in the top left. The runner acts once the corp is done, and has 4 clicks to take actions. This includes gain a card or credit for 1 click. You may also install software, hardware, and resources in these 3 rows, and play event cards. But the most important action a runner can take is to run against the corp player's servers. If you successfully run HQ, you may access 1 card in the corp's hand. If it is an agenda, you score it. If you run R&D, you look at the top card, and again, if it is an agenda, score it. And running archives lets you look at all those cards, scoring any agendas there. Let's use an example. We have 2 programs and 6 credits and want to run a remote server. It is protected by 3 bits of ice. The outer one is already rezzed. It has 4 strength and is a barrier ice. If we cannot bypass the ice, it will end the run. We use this program, which works on barriers, and boost strength to match the ice. We then spend a credit to break the subroutine. This means we can choose to move on to the next ice. The corp pays 5 to res it. They don't have to res it though. This one is a code gate, and we have no programs to deal with that. So we take 2 tags. Tags can only be removed after the run, for a click and 2 credits, and tagged runners are more vulnerable to attacks. We choose to continue and hit the last ice, a sentry. We spend credits to match its strength, but cannot afford to break both subroutines, so take 2 damage, losing 2 cards. If the card on the remote server is an agenda, we now claim it, or if it's a trap, we take a big pile of damage, potentially losing. Why would you like this game? Netrunner is back thanks to the efforts of Null Signal, a group of fans who can now legally sell a new version of the game. And this is great news because Netrunner is hands down the greatest competitive collectible card game ever made, far better than the designers better known Magic the Gathering. Netrunner has an incredibly high skill ceiling, and you just cannot download the best deck and start winning. You need to know how to manage risk, bluff, and read people. Building a great deck certainly helps, but playing it is the real difference maker. And I recommend this game for anyone who wants a real challenge in their card games. The best thing about this game is having the runner access your loaded trap and explode. However, while the game is back in print, it's not being sold in stores, and you have to go out of your way to find it. There's also some issues getting it into different countries, including the whole EU. If this was a for-profit game with these restrictions, I probably wouldn't cover it, but the game itself makes it worth hunting down. Also, also, you can play it online. For the designer's other card game, check out Magic the Gathering. And for a different game in the same setting, try New Angeles. Netrunner, simply the best gold medal game. Kyoto and welcome to Arks in about 3 minutes. Review copy used, core box only. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 to 4 players, playing time is long, and it's a moderately complex game. You are the leader of a spacefaring civilization. Can you fulfill your ambitions and become ruler of the galaxy? The game lasts for 5 chapters, each of which normally consists of 6 rounds of play each. The winner is the player with the most points, and as soon as any player crosses the relevant thresholds shown on this track, the game will be over at the end of that chapter. Trick taking. First and foremost, Arks is a trick taking game. Push your luck. You nominate public goals and then hope to beat the other players to them. Play a turn. Cards drive this game, and they come numbered from 1 to 7. They also come in 4 different suits. You'll start the chapter by drawing a hand of 6 cards. The first player plays any card from their hand here. They then take a number of actions shown on the dots. The type of actions they can take are on the card. The other players have the option to play a higher card from the same suit and take the number of actions on it. They can play a card from another suit to take a single action on it, or they can play a card face down to take 1 action from the leading suit. The player who played the highest card takes a leader marker, or if someone plays a 7, they take it too. You may also declare an ambition. This makes your lead card a 0. Take the highest scoring marker and place it on the ambition that matched the card you played. Let's look at the actions quickly. Build lets you put down a building on a planet you have forces. It can also build 1 ship, but is limited to 1 per shipyard a turn. Repair lets you flip damaged buildings over, as well as repair damaged ships. Tax lets you take resources from a planet. If it's not your city, claim an agent as well. Influence lets you put agents onto cards in an effort to claim them. And Secure lets you take cards where you have the most agents into your control, taking any agents on the card. Move lets you move any number of your ships into an adjacent space, or if they start in a spaceport, you can fling them many spaces. Battle lets you roll a die per ship. The blue dice are low risk, low damage, the red one's high risk, high damage, and the yellow one's high risk but allow you to steal from your opponents. Whenever you gain goods, they go on your player board, and the more cities on the board will give you more spaces to store them. Any ships you destroy or agents you capture go here as well. If someone raids you, they can take items off you equal to the keys rolled on their raid. The ambitions are scored as follows. Tycoon is the most of these 2 resources, including symbols on cards you control. Tyrant is the most agents captured on your board, and Warlord the most ship trophies. Keeper is the most of this resource, and Empath this one. Once all ambitions are scored, the lowest value flips over. Why would you like this game? Arks is something special, but that also means it's likely to be an intensely polarizing game. There are aspects of it that are simply brilliant. For example, making basic trick taking the cornerstone of the game and thereby eliminating 90% of the busy work of your traditional 4X game. That's genius. As is making the victory conditions something you nominate, and the earlier you do it in the round, the more they are worth. None of the petty fetch quests of other games. Once Warlord is declared, for example, things get ugly quickly. The 3 different sets of combat dice and how they work add layers to combat while maintaining simplicity. And the guild cards let you develop emergent powers and start breaking game rules. All up, a game everyone into conflict games should try at least once. The best thing about this game is just how fresh it feels, despite using one of the oldest mechanics in gaming. However, Arks is prone to massive reversals of fortune, and there are no safety rails. A bad run and you can be all but wiped off the board. And if you get raided, you can lose all the cards you've built up. Arks is brutal and unkind, but in a way that seems to reward audacious plays. If you want to turtle up and build fleets, you'd probably best play something else. For different takes on galaxy-spanning games, check out Twilight Imperium and Eclipse 2nd Edition. Arks, more like flips. Gold medal game. Kyoto and welcome to Guilty Gear in about 3 minutes. Review copy and deluxe edition used. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 players, playing time is short, and it's a moderately complex game. You are a fighter in a classic arcade fighting game. Only 1 person will be left standing at the end of the round, so fight. Each player has 30 life points tracked on the board. You win by knocking your opponent's life points to 0. Variable player powers. The game comes with 20 fighters, each with their own cards. Card management. The game focuses on playing and managing a hand of cards. Secret orders. When you play strike cards, they're placed face down. Player turn. Each player selects a fighter. Set up the board with your life trackers at the start, then place your character's Exceed card on the marked spot on the central board. You can also use the deluxe edition standees. Randomly determine who starts and draw cards. Cards come in 3 types. Normal attacks, which all players have, special attacks, which are unique to each character, and ultra attacks, which have an additional cost to play them. One core concept in the game is force, and you gain force by discarding cards. 1 point for normal and special cards, and 2 for ultra cards. On your turn, you may take 1 action. You may walk, moving 1 space for each force you have spent for the action. It costs 2 force to move through an opponent to the other side. You may also spend force to discard and redraw that many cards. Another core concept is gauge. Various effects will tell you to place cards in your gauge on the left instead of discarding them. These gauge cards are spent to pay for various effects, the first of which is taking an action to flip your exceed card to its powerful side. The boost action lets you play a card here. Purple boosts resolve immediately, but brown ones stay in play until they would resolve. In this case, the next time you hit your opponent. After playing a boost, you may discard 1 card from your gauge to take another action. You may take an action to draw a card, and if you did any action other than strike this round, you may draw another. The final important action is strike, and this is the core of the game. Each player places a card face down and then flips them over. You then check the speed of the card with the highest card resolving first. In the case of a tie, the active player goes first. Resolve any before effects on the card. In this case, we close 3 spaces. Then check the range of the card. If your attack is within that range, you do damage. In this case 2. This counts as a hit, so we get to trigger any hit effects. In this case we draw 3. Because this card was a hit, it goes into our gauge. Some other cards like this one add additional cards to the gauge. If a card has armor on it like these 2, those negate damage. And if you are struck first in a round and the damage exceeds your guard, you are stunned and your strike is cancelled. Otherwise, the slower player resolves their card just as shown above. And if you play 2 cards with the same name as an attack, that's an X attack, and you get these additional bonuses. Ultra attacks like this one cost a lot of gauge, but have very strong effects. At the end of your turn, your hand can only hold 7 cards, so discard down to that limit. Why would you like this game? I have never played the Guilty Gear video games, but I have played a bunch of other fighting game franchises, and my goodness does Guilty Gear capture the back and forth nature of those games well. There's a bunch of special moves that I didn't have time to cover, like pushes and pulls and jumping over your opponent so they can't hit you. The whole game just feels really dynamic and most importantly, quick and twitchy. It's also the kind of game where, if you have multiple playmats, you can have a small tournament running with players fighting out for supremacy, or just swapping fighters in and out. Guilty Gear is an amazing lunchtime game for 2 people or a small group. Best thing about this game is just how much it feels like an arcade battler. However, the extra action you gain by spending a gauge after placing a bonus is called a cancel, and that really confused me when I read it. Turns out nothing's cancelled, and cancelling is a thing from the video game. The box is also stupidly large and impractical, and despite being that big, the deluxe version stuff really doesn't fit anywhere without disassembling it. For a similar vibe but with dice, try Dice Throne, and for a simpler dueling game, try Star Realms. Guilty Gear. The real Guilty Gear is this box. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Acquire in about 3 minutes. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 to 6 players, playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. You are a hotel investor aiming to help hotels grow and expand while buying stock of them. When 2 hotels connect on the board, the smaller one will be taken over. Can you manipulate this market and win the game? A hotel is safe from takeover once it has at least 11 tiles. The game ends once all hotel chains are considered safe, or at least one hotel chain has at least 41 tiles. The winner is the player with the most money, and you get that from owning and selling stocks in hotels. Tile placement. Each turn you will place 1 tile on the board. Stocks. You will buy and sell stocks to make profit. Secret information. Your personal set of tiles and stocks are kept hidden. Player turn. Place the board in the middle of the table. Note that each space on the board has a number showing its column and a letter showing its row. Place all the tiles face down in an easy to reach place. Each player draws 6 and keeps them secret. You'll always have 6 tiles in hand, as each time you use one, you will draw a replacement. Gain $6,000 from the bank. Each turn has 1 mandatory action, and that is to place a tile. The first player places 10E on the board in the matching space and ends their turn. The first few turns will likely be people placing a single tile and ending their turn. When 2 connected tiles are placed, that player chooses one of the hotel chains and places that marker on the board. This set of 2 connected tiles is now the orange hotel chain. That player gets 1 stock in that color hotel as its founder. And now that there are hotels in play, this player may buy up to 3 stock. That cost is based on the color of the hotel and its size. So here that is 400 per stock or 1200 total. The next player adds the 7E tile. This makes the orange hotel now sized 4. So those same 3 shares now cost them 1800. The next player places 3G and founds the red hotel chain. That means they can claim a red stock as founder. But it also means they can choose to buy stocks now from both the red and orange hotels. They are still limited to buying 3 per turn. If you place a tile so that 2 chains would connect, a takeover starts. The smallest hotel is always taken over by the bigger one, and in the case of a tie, the active player chooses. Each player counts up their stock in the company. The player with the most gains the primary stockholder bonus, while the second place player gets the secondary stockholder bonus. If you are playing Tycoon mode, which is a more forgiving mode, the third player also gets a payout. You may then either keep your shares, hoping that a new red hotel will form, sell them for money, or swap them 2 for 1 for shares in the bigger hotel. Either way, the red hotel is removed from play. A hotel is safe from takeover if it has 11 tiles. So if you have tiles that would connect 2 safe hotel chains at the end of your turn, return them to the box and draw replacements. At the end of the game, you will pay out stockholder bonuses for each existing company and then sell all your remaining stock. The winner is the player with the most cash. Why would you like this game? Acquire came out in 1963 and has been in print ever since. The version I'm using is one of the most recent ones from Renegade Games. If you're interested in the history of modern board games, Acquire is an absolute must-play as its influence on the hobby has been profound. But how does it hold up as a modern game in its own right? Well, I have to say it's doing a lot better than many of its peers. And that's in no small part to its contemporary turn structure. Take one action of picking from 6 tiles, place it, resolve that, and then buy stocks. This is best suited group that likes games where you need to evaluate a constantly changing board state. The best thing about this game is watching the board slowly morph and evolve in front of your eyes. It's quite dynamic. However, being an old school game, you can make early mistakes and be utterly punished for them. Invest all your cash early in the game into secure hotel chains and you'll be frozen out of investing later on. There's also considerable math involved in calculating stocks and prices, especially during scoring. Oh, and I personally hate paper money. For a faster paced game with trading, try Chinatown. And for a very modern take on Acquire, try Dawn of Ulos. Acquire, Star Trek themed win. And Kyoto, and welcome to Inventors of the South Tigris in about 3 minutes. Prototype copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is long, and it's a pretty complex game. You are inventors in Baghdad, trying to outdo each other. Can you invent, build, test, and publish the greatest inventions? The game lasts for 4 turns, which is tracked using these tents. The winner is the player with the most points at the end of the game, and you get points from a whole bunch of sources. Dice. Dice are used to take actions and come in 4 colors. Worker placement. You can place workers to take the associated actions. Engine building. Inventors is all about creating powerful combinations of effects. Player turn. There is a central board with smaller invention boards placed below them and each individual player board. Let's look at how dice work. This symbol moves a die up 1 band. Dice at the bottom can't be used, while the 2 top bands get bonuses to their values. Colored dice can also go up the side here, gaining one-off effects as they move up. Dice are used to take most actions. The first 4 actions we will look at use the camel spaces, and you will place 1 or 2 dice here. We start with invent, which costs the dice value shown here and a number of discarded invention cards. We then place one of our invention cards onto that board, gaining influence matching those colors. Influence is placed here. We also move our royalty marker 1 step right. We then take an invention marker and place it here. This triggers one-off effects and scores points later. Next action, we build. We spend the dice shown here and activate the 3 matching crafters. They must be face up and you pay them silver as shown on the left here. You then flip them over and move them up 1 step. And because the bottom row is now clear, we get this bonus, flipping a crafter of our choice. The whole tower then moves down and we put the next numbered level at the top. Then place a marker here to show we built it and flip the bottom tile over and place it at the top. The third action is to test, and it requires that you gain a white dice from the supply but spend a colored die permanently. If the matching space shows influence, gain it. Then move your ship on the river that many spaces, ignoring blanks or spaces with red research markers. Claim the tile your ship lands on and place it onto your board in one of these spaces. The final camel action is to publish, and this costs the amount shown up top. Paying silver to the inventor if it's not you, and using the yellow and any other crafter. Then mark that you published it. Each invention scores at the end based on this unique goal, and it scores for builder and publisher, which can be different players. There are also worker placement actions that don't use dice. Some can have multiple workers, and many require influence to be spent. This action lets you gain dice or conduct research. The river has 3 sections, and you take the research token from the pile left of your ship and place it into a free space. These will have either ongoing benefits, benefits when you camp, or one-off bonuses. Then there are workshop actions. Each tile in a row triggers if you match or beat the number on it. And if that number is a color, there needs to be a matching die. At any time, cards may be discarded for their special effects shown here, and you may flip crafters to pay silver costs 1 for 1. End your turn by placing your tent and getting a placement bonus. Once all players have camped, advance all unused dice 1 stage and place your dice used back at the bottom. Then collect your income from here and here. Why would you like this game? I really just glossed over these rules, mostly to give you a rough idea of just how big the decision space in this game is. It's massive. This is hands down the chunkiest, weightiest, and possibly deepest game Garfield has ever put out. It's an absolute beast. I especially like how each invention can be interacted with by every player in some way during its lifespan. You'll need great awareness to take advantage of that. All up, it is a heavy Euro game for heavy Euro fans, who will get a kick out of all the interconnecting mechanisms and how each part of the puzzle in front of them interlocks. The best thing about this game is when it clicks and you start seeing just how it all works together. However, However, there is a lot here that isn't initially intuitive, and a barrage of symbols to get used to, and the setup is very fiddly as well. For the other 2 games of the trilogy, check out our videos. And for something else heavyweight, try On Mars, Inventors of the South Tigris.
God, you're right. I'm going to build that smelloscope.
Kia ora Kyoto and welcome to Nucleum in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is long, and it's a pretty complex game. You are an industrialist in Germany trying to take advantage of the latest discovery, nuclear power. Can you power the most towns and buildings? The game ends shortly after the 2nd or 3rd endgame flag is placed, and they are placed when various conditions are met. The winner is the player with the most points at the end of the game, and you get points from tons of sources. Just look for the gold shield. Action selection. Each turn you will use one of these tiles to take actions. Network building. Connected networks of buildings and roads is key. Variable player powers. Each player has unique technologies shown on this sideboard. Player turn. Most actions in Nucleum target your network. A network is any set of connections in your color through rail links and buildings. On your turn, you will select one of your action tiles to use. You can slot them on the top of your board to take both actions on them. Now let's look at the 5 main complex actions. Contract lets you select one of these 4 contracts and place it beside your board. You gain the placement bonus immediately. Develop lets you gain new action tiles. The first one costs the amount in coins below it, and the second one, if desired, costs 2 extra. The Urbanize action lets you place a building in your network, paying its coin cost as shown on your board. We want to place a yellow type building, but the yellow player has placed one already, so we place in one of the red spots at an additional cost. The Industrialize action lets you place either a mine or a turbine in your network, paying the cost in workers. Mines come with 1 uranium on them for every mine you own. Turbines take one of the available spots by a reactor. Once you have both the turbine and a mine in a row uncovered, you get the bonus between them, but you do not need to build them in order. The Energize action lets you power a building. Here we will use uranium from our mine, move it to the active power plant, and use that power to flip our building over. Powered buildings give you achievement tokens and other rewards. Larger buildings will need more uranium or a lot of coal to power. Some upgrades and tiles can give you bonus power. Completing contracts gives you rewards. In this case, it lets you choose a level 1 technology. Slot that technology into your board to show it as active. Each technology will have a unique effect, and you unlock high level technologies by taking actions with these symbols. As well as placing tiles above your board to take actions, you may place them onto the board as tracks. These will trigger actions if the tile matches the color of where it's placed. So here green matches green, but purple doesn't match white. Place a worker on the tile and flip it. On longer connections, you gain all the actions that match. You may reclaim all your tiles on your board and collect your income up to that tile line. Then, based on your achievement points gained since you last refreshed, place a scoring marker here. If you are the first player to place in the matching colored band, you may take the green token and power up a reactor of your choice. Why would you like this game? I've heard Nucleum described as the spiritual successor to Brass and Barrage, and while I see what people are saying, it's also a very superficial statement. Nucleum is its own thing, and it's really about these action tiles you get and how to use them. The fact you have to spend action tiles to build rail links means you have very tense decisions about what actions to keep and what to give away. And while there is some interaction here with the placing of networks, you're mostly using your own money, workers, and uranium to power things. The unique technologies also elevate the game's skill ceiling, and it really is tailor-made for heavy Euro fans. Well, the best thing about this game is the action selection system. It's very clever. However, there's a lot to wrestle with to get to the fun of Nucleum. It's a bear to teach and takes an age to set up. And making poor decisions with your action tiles can take an age to recover from. Expect your first few games to be pretty rough. There's also an unforgivable printing error on the player aid here. We've already mentioned both Brass and Barrage, but the action system really reminds me of Praga Caput Regni. And for a simpler game about power management in Germany, try Power Grid. Nucleum, it's a bit like this. Kia ora Kyoto and welcome to Axis and Allies Anniversary Edition in about 3 minutes. This features the 25th anniversary edition of the game, as well as my painted and modified pieces. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 to 6 players, playing time is long, and it's a pretty complex game. It's 1941 and the world is at war. We join the conflict just as the invasion of the Soviet Union and the attack on Pearl Harbor are about to take place. Can you lead your side to victory? The game ends once one faction controls 15 of the 18 victory cities. Area control. Taking control of regions gives you income and helps you win. Dice. Conflict is resolved with dice rolls. Player turn. There are 6 factions and 2 teams of 3 each. When it is a faction's turn to play, they take their entire turn before passing to the next player. Unless you lost your capital last turn, you start with money in hand. You may spend 5 money to buy research tokens. Then for each token, roll a die. If you don't roll a 6, you keep your tokens for next turn. But if you do roll a 6, discard all your tokens and then pick one of these columns. Roll a die and place your marker there, gaining the upgrade. If any of your production centers were damaged by bombing, you can repair them with money. Otherwise, buy units at the cost shown on this table. Infantry costs 3, tanks 5, and our newly improved fighters are 10 each. Place all units purchased into the mobilization zone on the board. Then it is your combat move. You will move all your units you want to fight this round. We move these troops and artillery from Transjordan to Egypt. Even though we have entered an occupied territory, do not start combat until after all combat moves are done. We want some more backup, and have a transport and a battleship near India. Our transport can carry 2 units and moves up to 2 spaces. We drop those units into Egypt too. We move our fighter 3 spaces to Egypt. Fighters have 4 movement, so we note that we have 1 left. After finishing all our combat moves, we resolve each combat by moving the units involved to the battle board. Each type of unit has a score it needs to roll under to score a hit. Our fighter would normally be a 3 here, but as we upgraded it to jet fighters, it's now a 4. Our battleship is in an adjacent sea area and not involved in a sea combat, so it gets to make a bombardment, hitting on 4 or less. That hit moves the defender to the casualty zone. Bombardment only happens on the first round. Each artillery makes 1 attacking infantry more effective. We then roll our attack dice. We score 3 hits, which is enough to eliminate the remaining 2 units. They get to counterattack though, scoring 2 hits, which we remove units for. As we won, we occupy the region. It is now non-combat moves, and we move up some infantry from Africa and land the plane into a region we controlled at the start of the round. Alternatively, it can land on a carrier. We then deploy units to the board at our production centers. Finally, total up all the regions you control and collect their value in money, gaining additional money if you have achieved any of the goals on your player board. Why would you like this game? Axis and Allies was the first big game I purchased for myself with my paper run money back in the 1980s. So when they originally released the anniversary edition back in 2008, I had to grab it. And I have no regrets doing so because this edition is the definitive Axis and Allies for me. Axis and Allies isn't a simulationist war game. It's not particularly deep and you can do some silly ahistoric things with it, but that's also why it's so popular. It's a war game that's a game first and foremost. And what it does so well is be the best toy soldiers game it can be, moving stacks of units around the board, rolling buckets of dice, and generally having a good time. It does take a big time commitment though, and it's a weekend game to be enjoyed with friends, and perhaps some beer and pretzels too. The best thing about this game is playing with my painted set. I spent months on this project. However, I really do not recommend playing this with more than 4 players. In a 5 or 6 player game, there's just too much downtime. And like all war games, the theme's not for everyone. Plus, it takes an age to set up and put away. For a simpler, lighter World War II game, try Memoir 44. And for something very tactical, try The Sabotage. Axis and Allies Anniversary Edition. Gold medal game. Kyoto and welcome to Harmonies in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players. Playing time is short, and it's a reasonably simple game. You are building a region and populating it with animals. Can you make the most balanced and harmonious animal sanctuary of all? The game ends if you run out of tokens or if you end your turn with 2 or less spaces free on your board. End the current round so all players have an equal number of turns. The winner is the player with the most points, and you get those from placing animal cubes and from building different landscapes. Drafting. You will draft tokens and cards from a central display. Tile placement. You'll place your tokens onto your board in planned patterns. Player turn. Choose one side of the board to play. Each player will play the same one. Then place 5 cards out between the players and the central board, with 3 tokens on each of the drafting spots. A player turn consists of 1 mandatory action and 2 optional actions in order. The mandatory action is to draft tokens. Take 3 tokens from 1 spot on the central board. You can place these tokens on your board and they don't have to be placed adjacent to other tokens. However, each token has special placement rules. Yellow tokens will score 5 points for groups of 2 that aren't connected to other ones. Grey tokens score points based on how high they are, up to 3 high, but only if they are adjacent to other grey tokens. Solitary grey tokens do not score points. You can't place a token on top of yellow, blue, or green tokens, but brown tokens can be stacked and topped off with the green token to create trees. The higher, the more points, up to 3 high. And brown, red, and grey tokens can be topped by red tokens to make buildings. Buildings will only score points if they have 3 different coloured tokens adjacent to them. Blue tokens score for longest line on the brown map and for creating partitions on the blue map. Once you have placed your tokens, you may take one of the 5 draftable cards and place it above your board. Place brown animal cubes on it in the spaces shown. You may only have 4 active animal cards. The final action is to place animal cubes, and you may do this multiple times. On each card it will show a pattern. Here that is a 3 high mountain and a water token with an animal cube on it. We have replicated that here. Now we place these 3 water tokens like so, we can put 1 animal on each of these spots. Animal cards are worth points matching the animals you took off, so this completed one is worth 16 points. Cards with no animal cubes on them don't count towards your limit of 4. You must have a free space to be able to take an animal off a card, so we cannot place a cube here because that blue spot is occupied. Same here. but we could place this one. You can also rotate the shapes to fit, so both of these placement options are valid here. You may also play with optional nature spirits, who are unique animals you start with who give you a special animal token to place. Each adds a new scoring rule just for that player. Finally, replace the tokens and cards you drafted with new ones. It's now the next player's turn. Why would you like this game? Harmonies is a game that sits in an exceptionally popular niche, a short game with simple rules that makes the brain hurt, has limited interaction, but excels at 2-player. And if you're thinking I'm describing a game that would be perfect for couples game night, you would be right, because it straddles the line between being just competitive enough to feel like you're trying to beat the other player, while not being confrontational in any way. No one's animals are getting eaten. The art in the game is lovely, and the overall package is just super pleasant to look at. It works fine at higher play counts too, but the back and forth and fast play at 2 is where it's best. The best thing about this game is the 3-dimensional aspect. It's hard to convey this on the screen, but in person it's really pleasing. However, aside from drafting tiles and cards you think your opponent might want, there's not much you can do to impact their scoring. So while it's competitive, it's not hugely interactive. And the nature spirits are a little swingy and dramatically change scoring. Treat them like an expansion and add them to the game later. For something a bit more nasty, try Azul. And for something a bit tighter, try Calico. Harmonies. Now this is an actual cozy game. Kyoto and welcome to Moonrakers in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 5 players, playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. You are the Moonrakers, a group of mercenary space captains who work together to complete contracts. Can you build the best ship and negotiate your way into being the greatest captain of all? The game ends once one player has 10 prestige. You gain prestige by completing missions and objectives. Just keep an eye out for numbers in a diamond. Deck building. You will start with a basic set of cards and add more through the course of the game. Negotiation. The most lucrative missions are almost impossible to do solo. Making deals is the key to beating them. Player turn. Each player starts with 2 credits and 3 blue reactor, 2 yellow thruster, 2 green shields, 2 orange damage, and a single grey miss card. Shuffle those together to form a draw pile and take 5 to your hand. Place your ship on 0 prestige and draw 3 objective cards, keeping 2. When it is your turn, you will be the mission leader, and your first task is to pick a mission to do. Each mission has a ton of information on it. At the bottom are the number of icons for each color you need to play to complete the mission. So here that's 5 shields, 4 thrusters, and 2 damage. There's also 4 hazard dice as shown here. More on those later. Completing this mission will give us 5 prestige and 10 credits, but we simply can't beat it yet, so select a simpler mission. We negotiate with another player and offer to give them the 1 victory point from the card, while we get the 2 credits and 1 bonus card. We each agree to take 1 hazard die. We roll a hazard die, gaining 1 hit. We will lose a prestige point if we don't play a shield card by the end of the encounter. And for example here, if we roll 2 hits and only played 1 shield, we'd still lose 1 prestige. Each player defaults to having only 1 card action to play. So in order to get additional actions, we'll need to play reactor cards. We play a thruster and draw 2 cards, and then play a second reactor. Our last 2 actions here are a thruster and a damage. We need to have played 3 thrust icons and 1 damage, but are 1 thrust icon short. Our ally plays their 1 action to play a crew card that reduces the requirements by 1. We take any hazard damage now. Then all players gain the rewards you agreed from the card. We get 2 credits and our choice of either the top crew card or top equipment card from the deck. Instead of going on a mission, you may stay home, gain a credit, draw 2 objective cards and keep 1, and then discard a mission and redraw. Once your main action is done, you may spend any credits you have on equipment and crew cards, replacing any cards you buy immediately. Equipment cards have a special ability, and in their top right, they come with cards that go straight into your discard pile. Then you and anyone who participated in a mission you ran discards their entire hand and redraws to 5. Why would you like this game? Moonrakers takes the fun of the basic Dominion style deck builder and gives it an entire new coat of paint by turning the core gameplay into negotiation. You can make the most amazing ship and crew possible, but if no one wants to deal with you, you're probably doomed. But there's something undeniably special in Moonrakers when you look over your hand, look at the missions and go, I bet I can solo that one. The art in the game is incredibly stylish, even if it is a painted photograph. Trust me though, it looks far better in person. And there's just the right mix of being able to make your own unique ship, pushing your luck to deal with the missions, and fascinating negotiations to make Moonrakers something quite wonderful, especially for groups that love a bit of banter. The best thing about this game is building ships out in different roles. I love being a helper that makes every mission smoother. However, like many negotiation games, this one falls apart if you have that one guy whose playstyle is to nag everyone about every minor detail on every deal forever. If people filibuster, you may need to impose time limits or the game time will bloat dramatically. And the endgame can be a little anticlimactic if people stop making deals. This is dramatically improved with the Overload expansion and the open missions there. Both expansions are good, but they also feel a little like cut content, as though the core game is the stripped down version. For the bare bones of deck building, try Dominion. And for a different take on spaceships, try Starship Captains. Moonrakers. With Overload, it's a gold medal game. Kyoto, and welcome to Snapship Tactics in about 3 minutes. Review copy and expansions used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for one or more players, playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. You are a fighter pilot, and your fighter is something special. It's a snapship, a modular platform that can be reconfigured to fulfill any operational requirement. Can you build the best loadout and win the battle? Each ship has a number of hull points, and when your ship takes damage, you reduce that number on the matching dial. A ship is eliminated when its hull reaches 0, and if you have no ships, you lose. Dice. Conflict is resolved using special dice. Variable player powers. Each ship has unique powers and can have a unique loadout. Player turn. Each side picks ships with an equal and agreed upon points value. Here, 4 points each. We're going to use a preset build for each fighter. Flip over your ship card and look at the preset components. Grab the cards for each of them and place them together. Then grab a dial and set your starting hull and evade. And then grab this number of power cubes. You may also want to assemble your ship before starting the game. For the presets, just follow the instructions included with the ship. Set up the play area with some terrain in it, and on a ship's first turn they are placed into the play area. Each bit of terrain has different rules for when a ship enters it. For example, ice clouds let you vent heat. Each ship activates one at a time, starting with its chassis specific powers. First we reset our green evasion score to its base level, then we remove 5 cubes from our cards, placing the blue ones back on our ship, and then we do this mandatory movement. We may choose to rotate the ship 1 increment on the dial and then move the ship ahead using the L tile. Movement is always done following the black lines on the circle while keeping the ship facing forward, and numbers with arrows above them are optional rotation. Once you have done your chassis actions, you may take any number of component actions. Actions have a cost in cubes. We use the jump engine and place 2 cubes on its top power. You can only use 1 power on each card, and only when it has no cubes on it to start with. This card lets us take another move action. We then activate the wings, which will increase our evasion score until next turn. We then make an attack with our autocannon. This has to be within our front arc and 1 or 2 range bands away. If you are on a ship's back arc, you will do 1 automatic damage. If you are flanking them, their evasion score will be 1 less. But let's shoot head on. This weapon has a 2+ hit score, which is added to our opponent's evasion, meaning 5 or higher is needed to hit. We are also rolling 4 dice. Blanks are auto fail. The 4 misses, the 6 does 1 damage, as this is a 1 damage weapon, and the flame symbol does 1 damage and a critical effect. Roll a hit die and count along your opponent's components. Flip over the appropriate one to its damage side. If you roll another critical, you can choose what component to damage, and any heat on a component removed becomes damage. Finally, we launch some missiles. These generate heat, which are the red cubes. Missiles are placed on our opponent, and their attacks are not resolved until after their activation, as they might choose to use anti-missile actions. Why would you like this game? The obvious thing here is the toy factor of the game. These are giant Lego-like models which you can assemble and play about with, and each of the hulls is very customizable. You decide you don't like the missile system on the ship? Fine, swap it out for an autocannon. As long as your ship has the right bits on it, you can make them up as you like. But what legitimately surprised me is how good the dogfighting feel of the game is. As a duel or 2-on-2, the ships dodged and darted around each other, and there were clear advantages and disadvantages to different loadouts. That said, I'd mostly recommend this game to a small group or family who thinks they will play a lot of duels. Teenage me would have played this to death with friends. The best thing about this game is the component management system. I felt I had important decisions to make every turn. However, Snapships is clearly a premium game with an associated price tag. These ships are utterly massive as well, and while 4 is plenty to play the game with, only 2 of these come in the core box. And for scale to its most comparable game, X-Wing, they are utterly massive. Obviously, Snapships will draw a lot of comparisons to X-Wing, and for a different take on modular ships, try Jore, Legends of a Drift System. Snapship Tactics. It's not just a gimmick game. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the notification button. Kyoto, and welcome to June Imperium Uprising in about 3 minutes. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 6 players. Playing time is long, and it's a reasonably complex game. June. Arrakis, a bleak and barren world which should be a forgotten rock, if not for one thing. It is the only place in the universe that the spice melange is found. The spice extends life, grants mental powers, and allows for safe interstellar travel. The entire empire depends on spice, and those who control the spice control everything. Once you run out of conflict cards, or one player reaches 10 victory points, it is the last round of the game. The winner is the player with the most points when that round ends. Deck building. You start the game with a deck of 10 basic cards and can add better ones. Worker placement. You place workers in locations to get the associated benefits. Player turn. Draw 5 cards. On your turn, you will either play a card and place a worker, or reveal all your remaining cards and end your turn. You can only place a worker in an area matching an icon on your card. This card has 3 icons, which match the green, blue, and yellow areas of the board. When you use a card, you can also activate the ability in the grey band here. This one lets you use your leader's special ability. Some locations have a cost that you must pay first. Here we spend 1 water to get 2 spice. You only start with 2 workers, but can spend money to unlock a 3rd one here. The faction locations on the side of the board can only be placed in if you have a character with a matching special symbol. Advance your cube on this track 1 step each time you place in either faction location. At step 3 you get a victory point, and at step 5 you get the alliance token. You can lose the token if another player overtakes you. When you add a worker to a location with a cross sword symbol, you can add troops to the conflict. You can add spice worms to the conflict, but only if you have previously unlocked the hook. And you can do that by placing here. We can either claim the hook or blow up the shield wall. The shield wall prevents worms from being added to conflicts based in those 3 regions. Each player has a base where they store their troops not currently committed to the conflict. This location lets you claim a Chom contract, which is a bonus that you will get next time you take that action. And these small circle areas are spies. A spy lets you either place in a location with this symbol or recall a spy to let you place it in an already occupied space. There are also intrigue cards that can be played for bonuses in and out of combat. Once you run out of workers, reveal the rest of your hand. You gain the bonuses shown on the blue part of the cards. The blue numbers are used to buy new cards. The cost to buy a card is shown on the top right, and you can buy multiple cards. Once all players have revealed their cards, play combat cards and resolve the current conflict. A player with worms in the conflict gains double rewards. Why would you like this game? The sandworm in the room with this review is that Uprising is very much Dune Imperium reworked. And the remarkable thing is that Uprising fixes every single little issue I had with the original game. Conflict is more important, which really mattered to me, and it also has sandworms. I also love the extra layer of decisions that come with the spy system, which was a great lift from Tyrants of the Underdark. And the Chom contract system is a must-use as well. As a result, I feel far more engaged by Uprising than I did with Dune Imperium. I also dig that the expansions for the original work with it too. I think Uprising is the game I wanted Dune Imperium to be in the first place, and would recommend it for any group of experienced gamers. The best thing about this game is they took a good game and made it better. However, the spies, worms, and other systems make Uprising about as complex as the original game with 1 expansion. And that step up in complexity won't be for everyone. There's also a 6-player team version of the game, but I haven't played that. For the first Imperium game, check out our review here. And for a similar game with spies, try Tyrants of the Underdark. Dune Imperium Uprising. Much more spicy. Gold medal game. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Endeavour Deep Sea in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is long, and it's a moderately complex game. You are a deep sea explorer. Can you use your scientific expertise to uncover secrets about the ocean and help preserve the environment? Endeavour lasts for 6 full turns. The winner is the player with the most points, and you get them from many sources. Just look for this symbol. Scenarios. This game has 10 missions that each present you with a different challenge. Drafting. Each turn you will draft 1 specialist from this display. Action selection. You take actions by placing markers on your specialists. Player turn. We start our turn with some upkeep based on our cube positions on these tracks. First, draft a specialist from the display. The columns you can draft from are shown here. This specialist has a chat symbol, so we move that track up 1 step. Then gain this number of discs to your supply. And finally move up to this number of markers from specialists to your supply. On later turns, this may mean you cannot clear all your specialists. Each turn you will take an action or pass. To take an action, place a disc on a specialist from your reserve and take the action or actions printed on them. There are 5 different actions you can take. Let's run through them. Dive lets us draw one of these tokens and gain the benefits shown. In this case, full research. Or we can advance one of our tracks 1 space. The second action is to journal, and we need to be in a space with one of these journal action spots. We then pick one of the 4 face-up journals that has a matching icon to that space. Pay the research shown here, and then gain the benefits. Here that is 2 advances on the reputation track, and flipping over a specialist. Flipped over specialists can grant new rewards and abilities and clear their disc. The third action is sonar, and places a disc from your supply on a sonar track. This particular one lets us draw 2 ocean tiles from depths 1 and 2 and choose one to place. Placing the tile gives us this bonus. We must place place the tile down so there is never an empty space above it, and regardless of what you do, there cannot be more than 5 tiles wide and deep. The move action lets us move a number of spaces shown on our ingenuity track. This also limits what depth we can go to. When we arrive at a new space, we claim that bonus, but only for the space we end at. The ingenuity track also gives you new submarines, and when you place a new submarine at the start area, you get the move bonus too. The final action is conservation, and it requires us to spend research and place a disc on one of these spaces, claiming the benefits underneath. If another player places a disc, and that would complete both parts of a line, each player gets the benefit in the middle. If only one player does it, they only get that benefit once. Journal, sonar, and conservation actions leave their discs in play permanently. Finally, let's talk about impact, which is the star symbol. You get that in many places, including advancing your tracks to the end. Impact markers are placed on the mission board at either a starting spot or adjacent to any other player's marker. Each space grants rewards, points, or both. Each mission also has different scoring options on it. Why would you like this game? Endeavour Deep Sea is an evolution of Endeavour Age of Sail, and it sends that game's colonial theme to the bottom of the ocean where it belongs. What's truly remarkable though is it's taken the great gameplay of the original, dialed it up to the next level, and rethemed it in a way that adds so much more to the experience. I love exploring the ocean and adding in new board tiles, and it feels very satisfying to see the map organically expand. And the presentation of the game is near perfect, especially the color gradient as you go deeper and deeper. Endeavour is the sort of game that will appeal to people who love optimization puzzles, as the engines you can build and chaining moves together is really satisfying. It's also got a co-op and solo mode too, using these cards. The best thing about this game is how it accelerates from a couple of actions on turn 1 to a gazillion on turn 6. However, there's a lot of visual information to take in, and while it looks pretty, it will be overwhelming for some players. For a different undersea action optimization game, try Underwater Cities, and for something simpler, try Abyss. Endeavour Deep Sea. Cthulhu expansion when? Gold medal game. Kia ora Kyoto, and welcome to Expeditions in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode, it's a game for 1 to 5 players, playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. A strange meteorite has crashed in Tunguska, Siberia, and it is causing all sorts of strange phenomenon to occur. You saddle up your mecha and get ready to explore the strange and frozen steppe. The game ends a full round after one player places their 4th victory star on this display. The winner is the player with the most victory points, which you get from stars, missions, money, upgrades, and corruption tokens. Card management. Expeditions is all about managing cards in clever ways. Set collection. Collecting sets allows you to place victory stars. Player turn. Each player starts with 2 character cards and a mech sheet with a unique power. The board starts with the green tiles revealed and the others face down, and 5 random cards in the gaps. There are 3 actions you can take each turn, and on the first turn you can do all 3 in any order. But normally, you must choose 2, and they can't be the same as last turn. Move makes you go 1 to 3 spaces on the board. If you move into an unrevealed spot, you stop, claim the map token, and flip the tile over. Then draw corruption tiles until their value is at least this amount. You may pass through other mechs but not stop, and when you move, you must move and not return to the same space. The gather action lets you do the special thing shown on your tile. Here that is to draw one of the 5 face-up cards. It goes to the right of your mech board. This action lets you draw 2 cards from the deck and choose one to keep, and this one lets you draw one and then return a card to your hand on the left of your mech. This action lets you do any adjacent action, including the ones that gain you different coloured workers. Those workers go onto your mech board. The play action lets you play a card from your hand to the right of your board. Advance the track marker that matches a symbol on the top left of the card. This card also has a worker spot you can activate. It has an ongoing effect at the bottom and a one-off effect at the top, in this case Vanquish. That's a special action that allows you to spend resources from this track to remove corruption from the board. This costs us 5 teal and 4 orange power, but what it's done is uncover a new type of gather action, and as we uncovered it this turn, we can do it for free. This one is called Meld, and lets us place a meteorite card under our board and collect money. Each time we meld, we gain the rewards of previous melds as well. There are similar actions to complete missions, which go to the top of your board, as well as to install upgrades that go on the right of your board, and you may only do 4 of each of these. In order to place a star, someone needs to have uncovered one, and then you use a gather action to place a star for 4 missions, melds, upgrades, the special 20 corruption tile, 7 corruption tiles, 8 cards, and 7 workers or 5 map markers. Finally, you can do a refresh action to move all of your play cards to your hand and your action cube back so you can do 3 actions next turn. Why would you like this game? Scythe was one of the first big breakout Kickstarter games, and Expeditions self-identifying as a sequel was always going to be a hard ask. That said, Expeditions is its own thing, and that's a fun mid-weight engine building and card manipulation game where you're trying to chain effects that work well together. The game is a race, and it's a race to get those engines humming so you can stash 4 meteorites and 4 upgrades, place down those stars and score your points. And it absolutely punishes you for dithering around with no direction. As always from Stonemaier Games, it looks wonderful and commands presence on the table. This version also has metal minis, but there's a plastic version too. All up, a solid middle complexity game with a few moving parts suitable to most hobby gamers. The best thing about this game is the card play. I love multi-use cards and chaining combos. However, the game has a curious approach to player count scaling, which is there isn't any. So a 2-player game feels sparse and open, while a 5-player game is jammed. There's also limited player interaction short of blocking spaces, and you can't do that forever. And while this game does feel pretty good to play, I'm not sure it's the kind of game I'll return to over and over again. For another game about roaming the map looking for resources, try Storm Raiders. And for the original Scythe, check out our review here. Expedition. It's Battletech for pacifists. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Love Letter in about 3 minutes. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 to 6 players, playing time is short, and it's a very simple game. You are trying to win the heart of the princess, but you are not alone in your ambitions. Can you play the game of castle intrigue well enough to get your messages through to her? A round of Love Letter is over if all but one player is eliminated. They gain a favour. If the central deck of cards runs out, however, the player with the highest value card in hand gains the favour. You can also gain a favour if you're the only player to have played a spy. The number of favour needed to win the game overall is 3 to 6 based on player count, with 6 favour needed for 2 players. Card management. Keeping track of the 21 cards in the game is the key to winning. Player elimination. You can be knocked out of a round really easily. Player turn. Each round, take the deck of cards, shuffle them together, and deal 1 card face down. In a 2-player game, deal 3 more face down. Then deal out 1 card face down to each player. You may look at your own card. When it is your turn, you'll have 1 card in your hand. You will then draw the top card from the deck to your hand. Of the 2 cards in your hand, you must choose one to play to the table in front of you, face up. The princess card states that playing her will eliminate us, so we have to play the guard. We then follow the instructions on the guard card of naming a non-guard card and another player. That guard stays in front of us for the remainder of the game, and each turn we will play a new card in front of us until we are either eliminated or the deck of cards runs out. And as mentioned, if the latter happens, the player holding the highest value card in their hand wins. There are 6 guards in the deck. The priest lets you look at another player's hand, which can help you target out other effects, like the Baron, who lets you compare cards with another player, with the player with the lowest value card in hand being eliminated. The handmaid keeps you safe from attacks for a whole round, while the prince makes someone discard their hand and redraw. And if you're holding the princess, you're eliminated. The chancellor lets you draw 2 cards, keep 1, and put the other 2 at the bottom of the deck. This does not count as playing or discarding a card, so if you have the princess, this is one way to get her out of your hand. The king lets you trade cards with another player, which can sometimes be a very silly move to make if you are handing that player a loaded guard. The countess must be played if the prince or king is in your hand, but may be played at any other time. And the spy gains you 1 favor at the end of the round unless another player played or discarded a spy. And finally, the princess cannot be played, but if the round ends and you are holding her, you'll certainly win. Why would you like this game? Love Letter is one of the simplest games we've ever covered on the channel, but I can tell you that after spending a day working with high complexity games, there's nothing like a short, snappy, and highly interactive card game to really get you back smiling and enjoying the hobby. Love Letter is a delight, and it packs away into a pouch that can be put into your pocket or a purse. You can teach it in a few minutes, and there are small player aids to help folks familiarize themselves with the different cards. Each round is quick, but it's full of fun moments, and even if you are eliminated in a round, you'll be back in the game in no time. There's also a ton of wacky different versions, and I understand many of these have slightly tweaked rules to fit their themes. The best thing about this game is its portability, and I love how stylish the whole thing looks. However, yeah, it's a simple small box game that's good with friends and family, so it won't be a good fit for people who only play heavier games. And you can get eliminated from the game sometimes without taking a turn, which I know pisses some people off. For another quick and light game, try Red 7. And for something a bit heavier and meaner, try Citadels. Love Letter. More of this thanks. Gold medal gained. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Trekking Through History in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is short, and it's a pretty simple game. You are a time traveler. Over 3 days can you visit the most important and interesting events from history. The game is played over 3 full eras of play, with each having their own unique set of cards. The winner is the player at the end of the 3rd era with the most points, and you gain points from many sources, including collecting sets of ascending cards. Drafting. Each turn you will draft a card from the central display. Set collection. You'll collect sets of cards and tokens in order to score points. Player Player turn. Each player will have 4 scoring boards to choose from. Pick one and put the others aside for now. You'll be wanting to place tokens on these boards to score points. You get those tokens from drafting cards from the central display. Take the first era set of cards, placing the others aside. Shuffle them and then arrange them across the bottom of the main board like so. When it is your turn to draft a card, you will pick one and pay the time cost shown below it. Let's look how time works. Each player's time marker starts at the top of the clock. The player who's on top of the stack is the active player. Yellow takes a 2-time card and advances their marker 2 steps. Teal is the next player and takes a 5-time card, moving to the 5 spot. Blue is the top marker furthest back, so is next to act. They take a 4-time card and move to the 4 spot. Red also takes a 4 and puts its marker on top of the blue player. Yellow then takes a 1-time card and is still behind on the clock, so picks again. They pick a 4-time card but spend 3 crystals to reduce its time to a minimum of 1 per card. Because of that, yellow gets 3 turns in a row. In addition to spending time when you draft a card, you gain the tokens printed on it. So here that is 1 blue, 1 brown and 1 crystal. You also gain the token below the card as well. Here that is another brown one. Slide cards right to fill any gaps, refreshing from the deck on the left. You can take the leftmost card, but it has no bonus below it. Here are all the benefits you would gain from each card. When you take a card, you ideally want to get a later time card than your current one, like this sequence here. If you pick an earlier time card, that interrupts your current sequence, and you must start a new one. You can also draft an ancestor card to extend your trips a little longer. The longer your trips, the more points they will score at the end of the game. Tokens you collect go on your scoring board from the top down. If you cover up a crystal, you gain one to reduce time loss later. If you cover up a number, you gain that many points. And if you complete a row like this, score the points shown at the end. Ancestors and some other cards will give purple wild tokens, and they can be placed in any column. When moving your timepiece, if you land on the 12, gain 3 points, but you can go over time. The round ends once all players have used their time. If it is era 1 or 2, set up for the next era and keep playing. If it is era 3, go to final scoring. Why would you like this game? Trekking through history is very much a family game, and we should evaluate it through that lens. As a result, it's not highly cutthroat, but it is engaging. The card drafting system is nothing remarkable, but it's got just enough going on to keep you paying attention. Because while you're playing the game, you're also juggling the long-term goal of building massive journeys for big points with the short-term desires to score maximum points on each of your scoring boards. To me, that's enough tension in the game's main decision space to keep me focused. The historic moments are nicely varied as well, and not just a slice of European history. I also really like that they give you this list of all the times in each card set. I highly recommend this for family game night. The best thing about this game is its basic history nuggets on the back of the cards. They're great conversation starters. However, for veteran gamers, there might not be enough here to keep you engaged for more than a play or two. While trekking through history does very little wrong as a game, it's still a family game at heart. For another fast set collection game, try Century Golem, and for a more involved history game, try Books of Time. Trekking through history. Sadly, you can't kill Hitler. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Flamecraft in about 3 minutes. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 5 players, playing time is short, and it's a reasonably simple game. You are a Flamecrafter, a magical artisan who works alongside dragons to create wonderful, magical enchantments. Can you be the best Flamecrafter in town? The game end is triggered once either the artisan dragon or the enchantment card piles run out. All players then have 1 more turn, and the winner is the player with the most points. Just watch for the heart symbol. Worker placement. Placing your dragon on a shop triggers a lot of effects. Set collection. Completing enchantments and scoring endgame dragons uses sets. Drafting. You can draft new artisan dragons from the face-up display. Player turn. The game has 6 colored resource types and coins, which are wildcard resources. Each player takes a player board, which acts as a player aid, the matching dragon meeple, and 3 artisan dragon cards. When you gain resources, they go to the side of your board. At the end of your turn, you may not have more than 6 cards in hand or 7 of any type of resource. As your reference card suggests, there are 2 main actions you can do on your turn: gather and enchant, each of which has multiple steps. Around the board there are 6 starter shops, and when you take the gather action, you will place your dragon onto one of these shops. You gain 1 resource matching the symbol of the shop and any artisan dragons there. Then if the shop has a free space, you may play a dragon onto it. That dragon must share a symbol with one of the spots, and grants you rewards based on what you cover up when you place. For example, here that is a fancy dragon card. You may then use one of the fire up abilities on the dragons at the shop. So here that is drawing 1 new artisan dragon. If you place your dragon on a shop with another player's meeple, you must pay them 1 resource. If a shop is ever full up with dragons, at the end of your turn draw a new shop from the supply. These advanced shops have a unique ability that triggers at the end of the gather action. Next up is the enchant action. Choose one of the 5 available enchantments and pay the resource cost shown on it. You then gain any rewards listed below. Here that is 4 points and an artisan dragon. Then find a shop that has the matching symbol and place the enchantment under that shop. You may then fire up all dragons in that shop. Now whenever a player gathers here, they gain the enchantment bonus too. Fancy dragons are scoring cards. Ones like this you pay resources to score points, while this type of fancy dragon scores points at the end of the game. And at the end of the turn, refresh the artisan dragons and enchantments. Why would you like this game? Flamecraft is such a warm and attractive game, and it has some of the most eye-catching art on the market today. You'd have to be some kind of monster to look at this stuff and grumpily say it's not for you. It also does a great job of keeping its complexity down despite having a lot of engine building elements. And that comes down to keeping the main decision really simple, gather or enchant, and then adding the complexity after that point. And can I just say that I love that while each of the colored artisan dragons has the same power, the art is unique for each of them. So for me, Flamecraft is a great lower complexity game with a bit of meat to it. Perfect for family game night with older kids too. The best thing about this game is how it makes you feel progress. Taking big gather actions mid-game feels very rewarding. However, the playmat is rather long and it takes up more space than it really should. For such a light breezy game, it is a table hog, and I think it might disappoint some serious gamers out there, because under its beautiful veneer, the core gameplay is solid, but it's not amazing by any means. For another cute fantasy game, try Ex Libris. And for a different take on adorable engine building with dragons, try Wormspan. Flamecraft, it's more than just cute dragons. Kyoto, and welcome to Daybreak in about 3 minutes. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. You are world leaders, finally coming to terms with the greatest emergency humanity has ever known: climate change. Can you pull humanity back from the brink? All players lose if they run out of time, if emissions cause the thermometer to fill up, or if any player has 12 or more communities in crisis. Humanity wins if emissions are reduced to the point where they go into the negative and you survive that round. Card management. There are multiple different sets of cards for you to manage. Set collection. Many cards will have stronger effects with multiple attached icons. Player turn. Start the turn by checking the temperature for how many crisis cards to place. Only place the first crisis face up. Then draw 2 global project cards and collectively decide which one to pick. Global projects normally start off inert. Each player draws 5 cards. You can play with your hand open, and other players can give advice, and you can play in any order you wish. You also start with 5 projects set up. These are the actions you can take. Let's take the clean electricity action. It says to discard a card from our hand to get 1 clean power plant per blue symbol here. So we discard a card and add 1 clean power plant below. You can also play a card on top of another card here, changing what effect is available to use. Note that this card required an orange symbol to play. We can now remove 1 animal emission per turn. You can also play cards behind an existing card to make it more powerful. Now we have 4 purple icons on this card. We will draw 2 extra cards at the start of our next turn. Some crisis cards can be avoided if you play a card on them, and most global projects require cards to activate them. Any player can play cards here. Once you are done, move on to the emission stage. First check demand, and for each point you are short by, add a community in crisis. You then generate 1 emission point per dirty power plant and emission token. Place your emissions up here in the atmosphere, along with every other player's. Then each point of forestry absorbs 1 emission, and every point of the oceans absorbs another. Any points left over go to the thermometer. Then remove the emissions on the board. For every full row on the thermometer, place a degree band. Leave the others in play. Note this is for 4 players. Lower player counts will use less columns. Then check the dice number beside the new band. Here it wants us to roll 1 disaster die. This die advances these tracks representing ecological damage. If a marker reaches a tipping point icon, resolve that track's effect. They're all bad. Then resolve the crisis cards 1 at a time. The first one here will add a community crisis because we have 1 extra temperature band, but we have 1 social resilience, so ignore this effect. On the 3rd card, however, we have no infrastructure resilience, so gain a community in crisis. This takes us over a threshold, and we will draw 1 less card next turn. Finally, advance demand and begin the next turn. Why would you like this game? Daybreak does a lot of things I really like, but the first big one is to take engine building mechanics you would normally see in a competitive game like Terraforming Mars and bring them into a cooperative space. But it's not just lifting and dropping those mechanics in. The way Daybreak is structured, you can pivot and change focus quickly, and you must take into account the needs of other players, because the players are so totally unbalanced, and that's wonderful. The majority world player simply has a worse position and more needs than the other players, and the US and Europe players need to help them, which is so damned clever. Anyway, I'd recommend this for any group into cooperative games. The best thing about this game is only having 5 projects in play means you have to play smart and play combos and pivot, not just throw the most cards on the table. However, this is 100% a cooperative game, and that means one shady person can ruin its fun. It's also very well researched and grounded in hard climate science, which will offend some people. And I suspect that after a few plays, it might get a bit easier to beat, even with some extra difficulty cards. For a different take on climate, try CO2. And for another great game by the same designer, try Thunderbirds. Daybreak. I really want to play this game in Parliament. Gold medal game. Kyoto, and welcome to the Anarchy in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. Solo mode only reviewed. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is long, and it's a very complex game. It's 1135 AD in England, and a secession crisis has driven the country to civil war. Can you help your side triumph in this period of anarchy? The game lasts for 5 full rounds of play, and your goal is to score as many points as you can in that time, by building infrastructure, raiding castles, and protecting your own. Action selection. You expend workers and resources to take actions. Roll and write. You will mark off many different tracks on your sheets. Campaign. There is an extensive campaign to play through. Player turn. At the start of your turn, you will draw 2 of these cards and select one to keep. It gives you an objective to score that you will tuck under your board, and a stack of workers and resources. You also gain all the workers and resources shown in the income area on your sheet. You also deal out enemy attacks above your board based on what round you are in. The enemy castles are shown on this board, and this is shared in multiplayer games. In order to defend your castle and attack others, you will need to build things. Let's start with your castle. The gate, towers, and walls are built here. Always spend the resources shown on the left and fill in the next spot to the right. Each spot marked off improves the matching castle value by 1, and may gain other rewards. The mode is built here and represented by the blue die. These tracks focus on wood, food, and troop production, and in the third spot of each track is the matching production icon. When you cover one of these, improve your production track here. All actions here cost a silver, and they start from the middle of the shield. You can then pick adjacent spaces with subsequent actions, gaining each reward in turn. The siege equipment spaces below have additional costs as well as a silver to mark off. You'll need these to attack enemy castles. On the right sheet there are 4 big sections, starting with governance. These have a leftmost track you advance with grey workers, and a whole pile of other buildings and actions that are unlocked. So with one governance, we can build the keep, and then fill out its other spaces. Many of these tracks interact with this deck of cards you have. This one gets you to match pairs of people to create more servants, while this one has you match numbers to gain the rewards. There are 6 of these in different spaces on the board, all granting different benefits. You can attack the enemy castle if you have the forces and siege equipment. Gain all benefits listed above and then move your marker onto the castle. Not taking the castle on your turn means you'll gain discontent and you'll only have 1 card to choose from next turn. These spaces in Warcraft let you learn tactics. Tactics are special defenses to help protect your castle. Let's look at castle defense now. Starting on the right, we resolve each attack card. Each attack angle has a letter. You compare this to the round's castle card to determine that its strength, E, is 4. This attack is on our gate. Our gate die is a 4, so we stop that one. The next one is defended by the towers, and we're 1 short, but we spend soldiers to help that defense. This attack can only be defended with the covers tactic, so we mark 1 off for each strength of the attack. The second to last one is defended by the moat, and the final one by the walls. That one makes it through, causing discontent. Discontent is negative points, but can be later overwritten with bonuses. Why would you like this game? The Anarchy is a successor game to Hadrian's Wall, and it takes all the lessons learned there and dials it up another notch. If you are a fan of heavier and more involved roll and write style games, this is likely to be a grail game for you because it is so involved. I love how the game takes the same approach a wargame designer would to create a historic wargame, but instead comes out with something very different. It's an absolute brain burner, and there are so many levers to pull and decisions to make. A game for folks who like having steam coming out of their ears from thinking too hard. The best thing about this game is the little castle. It's nice and tactile. However, I did all my plays of this one solo, and I'm treating it as a solo-only game. I can't imagine wanting to play this in a group, and the idea of teaching it while trying to keep track of everything in my own game as well is quite daunting. If British history is your thing, check out Britannia. And for the first game in the series, try Hadrian's Wall. Anarchy in the UK, but it's a spreadsheet. Kyoto, and welcome to Wonderland's War in about 3 minutes. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 to 5 players, playing time is long, and it's a reasonably complex game. War has come to Wonderland, with armies marshalling behind luminaries such as the Hatter, the Cheshire Cat, and Alice. Can you win the war while still playing nice at the tea party? The game has 3 full rounds of play denoted by these different coloured cards. Each round begins with a tea party phase, and once that's done you'll move on to the war phase. The game is over once the 3rd war phase is resolved. The winner is the player with the most points at that time, which you mostly gain by winning battles. Drafting. The tea party phase will have you draft cards from around the table. Variable player powers. Each of the 5 factions has very different powers. Bag building. You start with some tokens in a bag and add more throughout the game. Player turn. Each player has a faction board. Place these tokens on the right here and the rest of your tokens into your draw bag. Gain a shield token and mark your leader's strength as 1. Then place a marker over all of your upgrade abilities. Set the banquet table in the middle of the board with cards matching the current round number. Each player starts at the head of a table, and one at a time moves clockwise around the table to a space, claiming the card there. If you go past the head of the table, roll the madness die and gain that many shards. More on that later. Keep doing this until you have drafted 4 cards. Cards have the benefits you gain printed on them, such as these 2 tokens which are added to your bag. It also shows this meeple number in the top left, and you can place that many supporter meeples in any region on the board. Finally, this one has a madness die in its top right, so you roll that die and collect that many shards. This card also has meeples and a token, but lets you remove a shard. And this final example lets you do an upgrade on your board. Choose one of your 4 upgrade tokens and remove it. You now have that power. At the end of a Tea Party phase, gain a madness chip and add it to your bag. Then the player with the most shards gains a second chip, but loses half their shards. At the end of a Tea Party, you will place your leader onto the board in one of the 5 battlefields. Each battlefield scores points based on what round it is. Here that is 2, 8, and 10 for rounds 1, 2, and 3 respectively. Leaders will add their strength to a battle, but to simplify our example, we will not use a leader. Each player places a cube at the start of the battle track. Then each player draws 1 token and resolves it. If you draw a madness token, lose that many supporters in the region or stop fighting. Leaders can also take a hit. Keep drawing tokens and resolving them until either you run out of supporters or choose to stop drawing. The winner of the battle is the player with supporters or a leader left and the highest battle score. If you finish on a hammer icon on the battle track or drew a forge token, you may place tokens onto your board to gain various benefits and upgrades. The winner of the battle also gains a fortress in that region. Players not involved in the battle can bet on the result, choosing a card to place face down until the battle is over. If they win, gain a token, otherwise it's a shard. Then if there are still rounds to go, reset the banquet table. Why would you like this game? Wonderland's War takes the bag building of Quaxaquedlinburg and makes it into a war game, and that's a core mechanic I find absolutely fantastic. The drafting part of the game is smooth and simple and lets people experiment with a wide variety of powers. That includes all the Wonderland characters you can recruit in this phase that I didn't touch on in the rules section. This and being able to customize what each of the tokens does mean you can create a lot of varied powers. And the combat is tense and exciting, as each bag pull becomes another point where the result could pivot suddenly. And just look at it, marvel at it. What a stunning looking game this is. The best thing about this game is the gambling. Keeping neutral players engaged in other people's battles is brilliant. However, I got an old version on sale, not realizing they had dramatically changed 2 of the characters for balance issues, so I had to get new ones printed. Be wary of that. And bag building seems to rile some folks up. Fundamentally, it's no different to drawing cards from a deck, but to some it feels way more random. If that's you, avoid the game. For just the bag building, try Quaxaquedlinburg. And for a different take on area control, try Galilean Moons. Wonderland's War. Off with the heads! Gold medal game. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Hansa Teutonica in about 3 minutes. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 3 to 5 players. Playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. You are a merchant trying to build a network of trading houses in Renaissance Germany. Can you outmaneuver your opponents in this cutthroat game of commerce? The game ends once 10 towns have been filled with trading posts or once any player reaches 20 victory points. The winner is the player with the most points after final scoring. You score points from many sources, just keep an eye out for the gold coin. Action selection. There are 5 different actions you can take. Network building. You will build a network of trading posts on the board. Area control. Only one player can control each town on the board. Player turn. Each player has one of these player boards. Place a piece on every space except the leftmost one. Then put 1 disc and 5 to 9 cubes in your hand based on start position, and the remainder in a reserve. The top right row tells you how many actions you can take each turn. The 5 actions are summarized below your board, and you may take them in any combination. Our reserve is in the bowl, and our available pieces are on the table. When you take an action, you place pieces on the board from available, and whenever pieces are removed, they go to the reserve. The first action is income, and it uses a number shown on your bags on the lower right track. Take that many pieces from your reserve to available. If you have advanced this track to the end, you may take all pieces as one action. The second action is to place 1 piece on the board. You may place them anywhere that does not have another piece. If you want to displace an opponent's cube, you must move 1 of your cubes from available to reserve. Meanwhile, the displaced opponent gets to move their cube to an empty adjacent path and gains another one from the reserve to place using the same rule. If you displace a disc, it costs 2 cubes to the reserve and grants your opponent 2 free placements from their reserve. The third action is to move your pieces up to the value shown on the middle track. They must move to empty spaces. If you have a full line between 2 towns, you may take an action to convert them to a trading station. This places one of those pieces on the leftmost spot. You must have the right shaped piece for the slot and have have unlocked the right to place in that coloured area. If the path you have is adjacent to a town with one of these yellow banners beside it, you may remove your pieces to instead take that upgrade action. For here, that is to upgrade your action track to get more actions. Each of the 5 tracks is unlocked at a different town on the map. Whenever you use a trade route, the players that control the towns at either end of the route score a point. Score before resolving the action. So here, red and yellow both score a point. Control of a town is determined by who has the rightmost trading post, unless one player has more trading posts than the others. If you complete a track with one of these bonus tokens on it, claim it. It will have a one-off ability you can use, and they're worth points. Place a new token on any empty path. You may also score points by placing on this route once, completing a path from one side of the map to the other, and building a network of connected towns. You score 1 point for each connected town multiplied by your value on the top left track. Why would you like this game? I often hear people say Euro games are all multiplayer solitaire, and that couldn't be further from the truth here. Hearts of Teutonica is one of the most intensely competitive and in-your-face games I've ever played. The whole gameplay loop rewards you for getting in the way of your opponents, and the person who wins is usually the one who's managed to jam their pieces into the path of everyone else playing the best. It's also a game where you have to adapt to the constantly evolving board state, and sticking to a plan just because it's your plan will end badly every time. This is the big box, so it comes with a couple of expansions, but the game doesn't really need them, as the core game is infinitely replayable. All up, Hearts of Teutonica is a brilliant game for people who like pushy games that aren't directly confrontational. The best thing about this game is just leaving your pieces in someone's way and making them move them. It's glorious. However, this is a zero luck game and skilled players can absolutely dominate, and it can be a pretty miserable experience if you get behind, as the game has no catch-up mechanics. For another nasty Euro, you could try Troyes, and for a more complex network builder, try Brass Birmingham. Hearts of Teutonica. Queue pushing is cool. Gold medal game. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Defenders of the Wild in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. In the forest, strange industrial machines have started clear felling trees and creating pollution. You are the leader of an animal community who wants to defend the natural world and smash the machines. The game ends in a win if every single player camp is taken from here and placed onto the main board, and if all factory spaces outside the middle are flipped over. You lose if all 6 factory tiles are on the board, all 6 toxic sites are on the board, and if 2 defenders with the same icon are killed. Variable player powers. Each faction has unique cards and abilities. Action selection. Each card has a number of actions that you can take on it during your turn. Dice. Conflict is resolved with dice. Player turn. Each player chooses a colour and places camps on their faction wheel and the pawn. This is the setup for a 4-player game. They then choose one of their 2 leader cards and take the 12 cards named on them. Shuffle these together and draw 3. The board will be set up with a factory stack in the middle and 2 engines out building walls, as well as robots on the factory and in the outskirts. 12 tiles have pollution on them. Each player places 2 of their camps down and their marker. Then each player chooses one of their leaders in secret and places it face down. If you have no leaders in your hand, draw the top one from your deck and place it. Then you reveal. Some will have ongoing effects, others instant effects on the board, some will give group power-ups, and others will move the first player marker. Each card has a number of actions you may take shown in its bottom left, and the full action list is here. You may also discard cards with matching symbols to take additional actions. If you take an action in the same space as an enemy robot, you must roll the damage die. So here we take our first action to attack that robot and take some damage. Movement lets you go to the next space, or if your leader card matches the terrain type, you can move through that terrain and then move into an adjacent space. You can't move through walls, but can use the breach action to make a hole. This hole is permanent. You can take an action to remove all pollution in a space or clear a toxic site, taking a damage. If you take an action beside a factory, the sniper robots attack, doing 1 damage only on the crosshair result. If you breach a factory, defeat the robots inside and remove any pollution, you may take an action to rewild it. You may also take an action to return to camp and may take an action to place a camp. Actions like this will give you support, which moves your pawn along this track. And when it reaches the end of a track, only then may you take the build a camp action. You'll then draw leaders as shown by the number on your board and reset the track. Any damage you take is placed here, and if you take a 4th damage, you'll lose a leader at random. Then reset your health track. If that's the second leader from any player of the same terrain type, it's game over. You may take an action to heal damage though. Then the robots activate, either moving their engines to build walls, building new factories, spreading pollution, or launching hunter robots, all managed with a deck of cards. Why would you like this game? Defenders of the Wild is what I like to call a firefighting cooperative game, a game where everyone works together to defeat an expanding threat before it gets out of hand. It's a tried and tested formula, and Defenders of the Wild does bring some new wrinkles to it. Firstly, the way each player has to select their leader in private removes one classic objection to firefighting co-ops. That is that all decisions are made openly, so one person can essentially run the game for everyone else. and the powers on the defending cards can be quite game-changing if used at the right time. Secondly, it has a very unusual finale, as once you build your last camp, you are out of the game, and the other players keep playing. I'd really recommend it to gamers who do like that style of co-op game. The best thing about this game is the art, and I'm a sucker for cute animals engaging in terrorism. However, my least favourite thing in the first edition of Block by Block was the reaction die, and I'm not fond of seeing that system make a return here. And in general, Defenders of the Wild feels a little bogged down in places, and it just didn't click with me at all. For another game by the same designer, check out Block by Block. And for more animal terrorism, try Root, Defenders of the Wild. Not quite wild enough. And Kyoto and welcome to Amun-Ra in about 3 minutes. It has no solo mode, it's a game for 2 to 5 players, playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. It's ancient Egypt and you are building monuments that will last thousands of years. Can you leave behind the greatest legacy? The game is played over 2 eras, with each era consisting of 3 full turns, where players take control of provinces, gather resources, and build pyramids. At the end of the first era, all pieces are removed except the stone ones. The winner is the player with the most points at the end of the second era. Auctions. Each turn you will bid for control of provinces on the board. Card management. You have access to many cards with game-changing effects. Player turn. There are 15 provinces in a 5-player game. For 3 and 4 players, place some provinces on the board face down. These won't be used at all during the game. Arrange players in turn order here, put the temple into play, and deal every player 20 money. The first part of each turn is auctions. Orange bids 1 on Edfu, placing their marker there. Blue bids 1 on Abu, then green bids 3 on Edfu. Orange has been outbid, but they cannot bid again on Edfu this round, so they either bid 3 on Abu or 0 on Bereniki. Once all players are alone on a province, they pay the gold they bid and claim that province. Next, each player buys cards, farmers, and bricks. The cost of each of these is the same. You may buy as many cards as you have these symbols in provinces you control. So if Blue also controlled Edfu, they could buy up to 3, paying 6 gold. Farmers can only go into farming slots on provinces you control. And bricks are placed in provinces you control, with every 3 brick becoming a pyramid. 6 stone makes a double pyramid. Next is the offering phase. Each player bids a secret amount of gold. The temple is placed on the spot matching the combined amount bid. Any player may steal 3 gold using their theft card and may move the value up and down 3 with this 1 card. In this example, that reduces the total to this threshold instead. The player who bids the most goes first next turn, and so on downwards. The top 3 bidding players also get 3, 2, and 1 rewards each, which can be a card, stone, or farmer, or any combination thereof. Then you collect income. Each player gains 1 gold per farmer, multiplied by the temple amount up to 4. You also gain any gold just printed on a province, like the 8 here. Caravan provinces, however, only gain gold if the temple score is 1 or 2. Let's look at some cards. This one allows you to bid on the same province again, while this one blocks the space ahead of you. Here you add a bonus farmer outside the normal slots, while this card makes every farmer in a province earn 1 more. Here 2 stone becomes a pyramid, while this one makes a region's income 8 regardless of other effects. After 3 turns, you score points for having sets of pyramids in provinces you control, controlling the most pyramids on one side of the Nile, and 1 point for every temple in a province multiplied by the final temple score. And you can also cash in scoring cards, like this one that needs all 3 provinces you control to be connected. Why would you like this game? This is an old game with a new coat of paint, and it's a really nice coat of paint too. It looks and feels like a very expensive Kickstarter collector's edition. This version also comes with a ton of additional modules and mini expansions that I just didn't have time to look at in detail. As a package, it's fantastic. As a game, it's pretty good. This is a very typical Reiner Knizia game with auctions, blind bidding, and managing limited resources. As such, it's a classic Euro game in that it's quite cutthroat and competitive, but in a way that isn't directly confrontational. If you love the original, the new one is just a step up. And if you want to try an iconic game for 20 years ago, this is the best way to do it. The best thing about this game is the changeover between eras. That's what makes Amun-Ra a great game. However, while you can play with 2 players, it uses this module, and frankly it's not that interesting a game at that player count. And as it is a classic Euro, some folks may consider the game quite dry and abstract. For a simple auction game by the same designer, try Modern Art. And for something more confrontational, try Kemet. Amun-Ra, what a new edition should be. And Kyoto and welcome to Comancheria in about 3 minutes. It's a solo only game, playing time is really long, and it's a very complex game. You are leading the Comanche Empire through its history. How will you guide your people? The game is played in 4 eras, each with their own cards and win conditions. You may play any number of eras in a game. Each turn you will take an action and move this marker forward, rolling a die to see if you must do a passage of time. The era ends once the passage of time marker has advanced to the end. You win if you complete that era's objective, and you lose if your cultural military hits 0. Card management. There are multiple sets of cards for you to manage. Bag draw. draw. To resolve effects, you will need to draw tokens from a bag. Automa. The non-player factions are controlled with this system. Player turn. The center of your community is your rancherias, each with its 2 leadership figures. Each rancheria has separate bands and resources, and are represented on the main map with markers. Start the round by revealing 3 new cards. Some will have ongoing effects, some instant impacts, and others can be purchased later. Each turn you will take 1 operation. The first operation is culture, and it increases our culture score by 1 for each rancheria and 1 for each territory we control. The second operation is taking actions. We activate all our bands in 1 rancheria. We then place them on this track, up to our blue leader's medicine rating. The first band wants to hunt. Its movement is 5, shown here. It costs double to move without horses. We move to the nearest bison, then we spend 3 movement to hunt it, and then our last move goes back to the rancheria. We then mark that band as finished and activate the next one. It takes our red leader and moves 2 spaces to this nearby tribe. We raid it, drawing 2 tokens because of our strength here. We then roll a die because we have our leader. If we get under their medicine, we draw an extra token. For each success, we gain horses or captives, and we also place 1 total ravage marker. Place the enemy tokens aside for now. The final band moves here to trade, swapping horses and captives for trade goods and food. They could return to either Rancheria A or B. The third operation is prepare. Take all the successes you've earned before and increase your leader's medicine scores. Some successes will end up out of play and others on the time track. Then you may take headman actions with each blue leader. Either one or roll a die and get under their medicine and take that many. Each success can return 1 success to the pool, swap culture for military points, or buy cards from the display. Each band then drops in strength by 1 point. The final action is passage of time, and here you can move your rancheria, spend food to upgrade bands, retire red leaders to become blue leaders, and check to see if unretired leaders die. Any ravaged settlements on the board are removed, and you can buy a culture card with culture points. Then all successes go back to the cup. Then after each operation, your opponents will act. Roll to determine which opponent, and then again to flip a token. They spend those APs on actions, 1 at a time, and then save any leftover points. Each token has its own rules, which can have the opponent start a war, build settlements, destroy neutral tribes, end a war, or attack our culture. Generally though, if an opponent has a ravage token on them, they will stop to deal with those first. Why would you like this game? Comancheria is a big beast of a game, and it does so many ambitious things all at once. It's a game that models the full rise and fall of a nation from start to finish. It's both a sandbox that lets you make tons of choices about where to expand, who to fight, what to build, and how to develop your culture, while being very clear in the history you are playing through. The final era is brutal and deals with the creation of the reservations and ethnic cleansing. At no point does Comancheria shy away from its subject matter, and I respect that. The AI system is a bit fiddly, but it's really deep once you get the hang of it. The best thing about this game is its sheer scale and scope. However, I knew almost nothing about the Comanche before playing this game, so I have no idea if it tells their story well or not. My gut says that it does, but I'm not an expert. Also, this is a super hard, rather complex solo game with very adult themes. I'd recommend it to veteran solo gamers only. The same designers also created Navajo Wars, and for a non-historic solo game, try Nemo's War. Comancheria. No jokes on this one, sorry. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Star Trek Away Missions in about 3 minutes. Review copy used, some expansion shown. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 players, playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game.
We are the Borg. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service us. Resistance is futile.
The game lasts for 3 full rounds, with a round ending once all characters have been activated. The winner is the player with the most points, and you get these by completing missions. Deck construction. Each player has 2 pre-built 20-card decks, 1 for missions and 1 for support. Dice. Conflict is resolved with dice rolls, many of which are opposed. Player turn. Take the character boards for your squad and place stars in each of the marked spots, and grab the character's miniature. Draw to 5 support cards and 5 mission cards, and on turn 1, you may mulligan some of these and redraw. Set up your models on the board as shown in the scenario. For each character you have less than your opponent, gain a bonus token. The Borg start with only 2 characters in play, but get 2 new ones each round. On your turn, you will activate a character and take 2 actions with them. You may take the same action multiple times. Alternatively, you can use a bonus token and take 1 action. We'll take the take cover action, which will make us harder to wound until we move. Shelby is the next to activate and spends her first action to move. She has 4 movement, but stops here because you cannot advance into a space with an enemy character. Turbo lifts count as adjacent to all other turbo lifts, and teleporter spaces interact with support cards. Shelby's second action is to attack with her phaser. She has 2 attack skill, so gets 2 dice. Another one for the Type 2 phaser in her weapons list, and a 4th because she is a Borg expert. The Borg drone has 2 defense, so gets 2 dice, plus 1 for taking cover. Players may play support cards to boost and manipulate dice rolls. We roll these results and then match the dice up, highest to lowest values, with the symbol being a 6. If the attacker rolls higher on a pair, that counts as a hit, and the defender wins ties. So counting along this line, we have hit, miss, miss. But what of unopposed rolls? Well, let's imagine the Borg did not take cover. Any unopposed roll of 4 or higher counts as a hit. 3 or under is a miss. Each hit removes one of those stars from a character, and if you can't remove a star, they are eliminated. Now it is the Borg turn, and they play a piece of equipment onto this Borg as a free action. They then take the action shown on this card, first to place it on the table, and then to attempt a skill test. The Borg is at an operations terminal as required by the card. They then get 2 dice for their skill. If they have a matching skill specialization, they get another one. Any rolls of 4 or higher count as successes. You may also get an additional die if you share a space with an ally. The final actions are to draw an operations card, discard and then draw a mission card, or do nothing. And remember to place an activator token to show your character has acted. Why would you like this game? Being a Star Trek fan will certainly be the #1 reason to pick up this game, because while the core set comes with Federation and Borg characters, it's being sold in multiple expansion packs, including the Klingon and Romulan ones shown here. As a skirmish game, it's legitimately pretty good, and I do like how it focuses on missions and completing tasks rather than just battles of annihilation. The cards allow for a bunch of wacky thematic fun, such as teleportation and Borg drones rising up for the dead. Oh, and there's the Borg side of the board if you want a change of pace. All up, I think this would best suit a group of fans where everyone plays their favourite factions. The best thing about this game is assimilating your opponents as the Borg. Well, it would be if I ever managed it. However, 10 cards in hand is a lot to manage, especially as you need to be mindful of both scoring missions and using your support cards at the right time. I used card holders, but the game does not come with them. It also feels like a game that needs a community around it and support. I think playing this as a couple at home will get old pretty quickly. For another small-scale combat game, try Memoir 44. And for more epic Star Trek, try Ascendancy. Star Trek Away missions. Set phases on Collect. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Raising Robots in about 3 minutes. Review copy and deluxe edition used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 6 players, playing time is medium, and it's a pretty complex game. You are an inventor trying to design the most interesting, useful, and adorable robots possible. Can you be the most successful inventor of all? The game lasts for 8 full rounds tracked using this marker. The winner is the player with the most points at the end of the game, and you get points from lots of places. Just watch for the pink stars. Action selection. Each round the players will pick which phases will take place. Engine building. Playing cards that work well together is the key to winning. Variable player powers. You can play with different inventors with different powers. Player turn. The game has 4 core resource types. If you go above 10, flip the token over. Duct tape is a wild resource and batteries something else. All these things and victory points are tracked up here. Each player has 8 power cards and shuffles them and draws 2. You'll then assign a phase card to each of them. All players do this in secret and then reveal. For each card with a yellow cube matching that space, place 1 cube in the central area. Note that no one assigned Fabricate, so that phase will not happen this round. In each action phase, you will get the power shown on your card, plus a power for each yellow cube, unless you played a card like this, which gives you 2 power per yellow cube. Let's resolve these phases one at a time. The amount of power you have in each phase determines what you can do. We have 8 power during upgrade, and can split that to take 2 actions. We spend the resources or cards shown here to remove 1 upgrade marker from the board. This one lets us pick one of these 3 options, while this one will give us more power during recycle. We can save these markers for later or place them down immediately. We place them on these 2 robot cards. Assemble is how we build robots. We only have 1 power in this phase, so spend a battery to make it 2 power. Robots have a build cost shown in their top left, and more power makes them cheaper to build. We spend the resources on the track above, plus an extra one to place on this slot as shown at its top. If we had more power, we could design more robots. It is now the design phase, and we get 1 power because of this upgrade here. This lets us trigger the 1 power ability, but nothing below it. We then check our robots. Breaker needs 4 or 6 power to work, so we go to the newly built Blockbuster. It has no upgrade, so we can only choose a top row action, which is to discard a robot card and gain 2 gears. There is no Fabricate phase, but it works just like design and recycle. Recycle is next, and we have a whopping 7 power, so we can do all 3 steps listed on the recycle card. And because all 3 of our robots are upgraded, we can take all 3 actions in sequence. This makes us a lot of points and resources. At the end of the round, put your used power cards in the discard and draw 2 more. After the 4th round, pick up that discard and shuffle them again. This mid-phase also lets you get a goal card. Goals score victory points for you, and can be upgraded with an upgrade token too. Why would you like this game? Raising Robots is a delightful looking game that takes a lot of mechanisms from other popular titles and crashes them together to make its own thing. And while you can clearly see the sources that inspire the game, such as Wingspan and Race for the Galaxy, Raising Robots manages to do enough to make it feel like its own game. Which is great, because the publishers made a real effort to make the game look as good as it possibly could. But as always, gameplay is key, and that's the standout here. The energy allocation, upgrades, and robot actions all combine trying to make a game where you are chaining together move after move, and that is super satisfying. As a result, it's quite meaty and thinky experience, and it has a high skill ceiling. Definitely for more serious gamers out there, despite how it looks. The best thing about this game is the robot art. My goodness, they're just a delight. However, after the energy allocation phase is over, there is no player interaction. Everyone does their own thing on their own boards. As a result, the game atmosphere is mostly people muttering numbers aloud. This does mean it works equally well at all player counts though. We've also reviewed Wingspan and its official sequel Wormspan, and for something more complex, check out Inventors of the South Tigris. Raising robots, more like Wingnut. And Kyoto, and welcome to Waterfall Park in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 3 to 5 players, playing time is medium, and it's a pretty simple game. There's not much theme here. All you need to know is it's a water park and you need to trade your way to success. The game lasts for 4 rounds tracked using this marker at the top of the board. The winner is the player with the most points, which you get from building stores on the main board. Tile placement. Each turn you will get a number of location tiles to place. Trading. You can trade locations, shops, and money in this game. Set collection. Completed sets of stores will generate you the most victory points. Player turn. Pick the right overlay here for your player count. We will go with 5 players. Then place the round marker. This shows you how many property cards each player draws and discards, in this case drawing 5 and discarding 2, and how many building tiles you are dealt. Each player also has a set of tile frames in their player color. We flip over our 5 property cards and they show numbers that match locations on the main board. We choose 3 to keep and return the other 2 to the discard. All players do this in secret and simultaneously. We then place our tile frames on the board, as does each other player. We all then reveal what building tiles we got. Each building tile has a number on it. That's how big a set of those tiles has to be to count as complete. Now it's the trading phase. Let's make things more interesting and put 2 turns worth of tiles on the board. We now have these building tiles as well. As the picked player, we are a bit scattered on the board. Let's make some deals. Right away, Red wants to make a deal. We each have a tile adjacent to 2 of the other players and agree to a straight swap. Tile 81 is in a bad position. Green wants to expand, but they can choose yellow or blue to deal with. So we offer to trade shop tiles with them, using the 81 location as a sweetener to the deal. We do a tile and shop trade with blue here, giving them a tile that they can grow with as well as the shop that they need. And finally, we make a deal with yellow so they can start expanding. Once all trades are done, you can place shops down. This group of 3 is a full set, as the tiles all touch, and of course, they have the same player's frame. These 2, however, count as 2 independent groups of 1 tile. You can have a complete set like this 4 here, as well as a second set of 1 in the same block, and that 1 can be a different shop. And the biggest complete shop is 5 connected tiles. Once all tiles are placed, collect income, with incomplete shops gaining the money on the left and complete ones the amount on the right. So this complete group of 5 gains 12 money, while this incomplete group of 3 gains 5. Place all your money by your player tiles, flip it over and keep it secret. And once you have money, you can use it in trades. Why would you like this game? Some of you may have known or noticed that Waterfall Park is a reworking of the popular game Chinatown. What it has done is take that core game and shortened and streamlined it, removing some of the rough edges in the process. It keeps the core of Chinatown mostly intact, which is about trading and making deals about locations and shops. And it's a noisy game that suits groups that like high interaction and table talk. As a result, it is a very fast-paced trading game, suitable for families and casual gaming groups. The best thing about this game is the tiles that stick into the board. It's a really clever design and they aren't going anywhere. However, Waterfall Park makes absolutely no sense as a theme. All I can think is that the publisher, upon hearing some people found Chinatown awkward, decided to go with the most sanitized workshop theme they could think of. And frankly, it's a pile of nonsense. I mean, who are you in this game and why are you competing? The gameplay is also shortened and dumbed down a bit from the original Chinatown, and I found myself longing to play the original instead. Obviously, we've reviewed Chinatown, you can find that here. And for a trading game turned up to 11, try Sidereal Confluence. Waterfall Park, we need a 3rd bowl of porridge. Kyoto, and welcome to Steam Up in about 3 minutes. Deluxe version used. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 to 5 players, playing time is medium, and it's a pretty simple game. You and your friends are sitting down to eat some dim sum at your local Chinese restaurant. Can you spin the turntable around and nab all the delicious treats you want? The game ends after 18 rounds, tracked using 18 fate cards. Or once the steamer track, which moves down for every steamer purchased, reaches 0. The winner is the player with the most hearty points, which you mostly get from eating dim sum. Action selection. You must take 2 of these actions each turn. Contract fulfillment. You use food tokens to buy steamers. Variable player powers. Each player will have a different player board. Player turn. Each player picks one of the 12 player boards, each based on one of the animals from the Chinese zodiac. Note your unique ability and then take the shown starting resources and fortune cards. Also note the values you get for placing the 5 dim sum on your board. The roosters go from 1 to 3, left to right. Some characters, like the seafood loving tiger here, have very different scoring systems. On your turn you must take 2 actions, and they must be different actions, but they can be in any order. You may grab any food token from the supply. These tokens are limited, but you can hold as many as you want. You may draw a fortune card from the deck. This action also allows you to rotate the turntable 90 degrees in either direction. You may play a fortune card. Here we roll the lucky die and gain the matching token to our supply. This card is placed in the discard pile once it is used. There are many different fortune cards with many different effects. You may also rotate the turntable with this action. The 4th action is to discard 2 fortune cards for any food token. The final action is to buy a steamer. Each player has a marked part of the board that is their feast zone, which you can track using tokens. You may only purchase steamers from your feast zone. You are required to spend tokens that match the dim sum in the steamer you want. You then take that steamer, potentially revealing new ones below. Place the steamer near your board and place the dim sum on your player board. Each number you cover up is hearty points added to your score, so this steamer is worth a total of 6 points. Adjust that on the score track. Once all players have acted in a turn, turn over a fate card and resolve it. Note that the first player marker doesn't move automatically. It moves as a result of different fortune cards being played. Keep playing until the fate cards or steamer track runs out. Why would you like this game? Steam Up is a very light, fast-paced and somewhat silly game about fighting over a turntable of dim sum at a Chinese restaurant. And it's the sort of game that gives back the energy you put into it. So if you love games where there's a lot of slightly hostile interactions and constant reversals and chaos, you will get a lot back from Steam Up. And I really like the different player powers and bonuses. I'm not sure if they're balanced at all, but I don't think it matters, because this isn't a game you play to test how you can maximize points generation. It's all about the player interaction and sniping that last serving of dumplings. The best thing about this game is its overall presentation and appearance. It's a beautiful looking game. However, this is a low complexity game that has its elbows out. Lots of the fortune cards screw other players, and invariably the end game is a rush to shovel down those last few steamers. If you don't like chaos and conflict, this won't be for you. And it's not a deep game, and you shouldn't take it too seriously, so I can only recommend it to people who play games to have fun. For a different take on food, try Rival Restaurants. And for a more complex game of the Lazy Susan, try Planet Unknown. Steam Up. The pig likes it! Kyoto, and welcome to Ancient Knowledge in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 to 4 players. Playing time is short, and it's a reasonably simple game. In Ancient Knowledge, you are building a crazy collection of monuments from all over the world and from many different cultures. Can you make the most magnificent constructions? The game ends once any player has 14 war cards in their personal discard, called the Past. You then play until each player has the same number of turns. The winner is the player with the most points, which you get from the 8-pointed star. You also lose points for every token here. Card management. There are 2 types of cards and 7 suits for you to manage. Engine building. You want to play cards that chain off each other to create powerful effects. Drafting. You will draft technologies from a central display. Player turn. Set up the technology boards in the middle with 2 tier 1 and 1 tier 2 board. Add 3 matching cards to each board and flip them over. Then each player grabs one of the player boards and takes it and draws 10 cards and keeps 6. 10 is the hand limit in the game. Each player's turn has 3 phases, starting with the action phase where you will take 2 of the following actions. And you can take the same action twice. The first action is Create, and it lets you play a card onto your board. Purple cards are artifacts and have an ongoing effect on them. Once placed, an artifact cannot normally be removed, and you only have space for 5 of them. The other 3 types of cards are played to the top of your board. Place it in this numbered slot above the board, then place this many knowledge tokens on it, and discard this many cards to pay for it. Some cards have a lightning bolt symbol on them, which is a one-off effect which triggers when it is placed. The Ouroboros symbol is an ongoing power, but triggers each time the condition is met. So placing this blue card triggers both the blue card in the 5 spot and the artifact below. You may place up to 2 monument cards in each number column. Another action allows you to discard cards from hand to remove that many knowledge from monuments. In the actual game you would only get 2 actions, not 8. So let's show the next 2 phases. The timeline phase lets you activate every single card with this symbol, and you can do that in any order. So here we draw 1 card and remove 1 knowledge. Then the decline phase shifts all monuments 1 column left. Let's do that twice so we have some monuments enter the past. When that happens, place any knowledge left on a card in the past here. These are negative victory points. Then trigger any effects with this symbol. so here we would draw 4 cards. Some cards can interact with the Lost Knowledge pile though. Now for the last 3 actions. You may take an action to draw 1 card, or you may tap any number of cards in the past to gain 2 cards each. The final action is to research. Choose a research card from here, noting that many of them have requirements in their top right. Do not replace cards that are taken until only 1 remains in a row. Then discard the remainder and place 3 new cards there. Tech cards are placed here, and note that they can trigger effects on your board. Cards here are considered part of your collection for prerequisites. Once any player has 7 cards in the past, remove all cards from one of the tier 1 tiles, flip the board over, and draw 3 new tier 2 techs. Why would you like this game? Ancient Knowledge was a very surprising game for me, as I initially wasn't expecting much about it, but it turned out to be quite a good time. The core rule set is very simple, but the card interaction is what brings the game to life, and there are a whole bunch of cards with unique effects for you to experiment with. There's also a real natural flow to the game, with monuments slowly drifting to the left each turn, and that makes for a constantly evolving board. And I think that's neat, having a game that focuses on things being temporary rather than constant growth. I also love it when the game has a small FAQ for frequently missed rules. I think this would be a perfect game for couples, as it shines at 2-player. The best thing about this game is the variety of engines you can build. I love the ones that scores off big negative points. However, the theme doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. I get the idea of things going from the past, but it makes you feel like an alien collector of Earth Monument trading cards more than a civilization builder. And the game grinds a little at high player counts too, and there isn't much player interaction to speak of. Want something with more players? Try 7 Wonders. And for a heavier engine builder, try 51st State. Ancient Knowledge.
The world has changed all around it, but Roebling's erection still stands.
Kyota Kyoto, and welcome to Mass Effect in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players. Playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. You are Commander Shepard, Spectre and Commander of the Normandy. An enemy ship has crashed on a planet. Can your team explore it and discover its secrets? Each mission has its own goals, and you must either complete the Red Renegade goal or both the Paragon goals to win the mission. You'll lose a mission if Shepard is downed, or if you run out of time and draw too many escalation cards. Dice. You will use a special set of dice to take actions. Character development. Your characters will develop more powers as the game progresses. Campaign. The full game consists of 5 story-linked missions. Player turn. Select a mission to do from the campaign list and set it up with the matching card and enemy sets, as well as elite units. Place elites on their mark spaces and a randomly drawn enemy on each enemy space. Then place supply markers, objective markers, and turrets as shown on the map. Finally, place down your 4 characters in their starting spots. At the start of the round, you will have 12 dice, and will deal 1 hazard card to each character. Roll the whole dice pool for the first character. Here Sheridan gets 1 star result, which flips over 1 of their special tokens. She then gets to take 3 actions using the dice. First, she shoots this enemy in her line of fire, which is a straight line extending out from the model. She does 2 damage, and because this enemy has 2 shields, as shown here, they are removed. Her second action is to move 3 spaces with this 3 movement die. And finally, she activates the objective marker with this die. She then reveals her hazard card, which moves all assault troopers. None of them started adjacent to her, so she is not attacked. The card also spawns a new enemy. Rex is next, and he rolls the 9 remaining dice, getting 3 stars, which powers up his ability. He moves 2 spaces and then uses this special attack, doing 3 damage to all adjacent enemies. He then rushes forward to block for Sheridan. We reveal our hazard card and escalation, which we place face up near the board. We then draw another hazard card, which activates engineers. They shoot and move. 6 dice remaining. Garrus is next. He moves here using 2 dice, and then takes a shot with his rifle. Shepard spends 1 of her command tokens to let Garrus turn his basic attack into a special one, removing this Guardian with 3 damage. Then elites activate. 1 attacks Rex, and the other moves. Liara is last to act and only has 3 dice. They have few pressing concerns, so they move to collect the loot token, gaining some XP. Then move 3 hexes to here, and while they can't kill this enemy, they can use lift to place a biotic token on it, reducing its damage by 2. The final hazard card activates Guardians and elites who attack. The attack value is the left number on a token, and it first comes off shields, and when those fail, damage goes to health. Once the round is over, reset shields to full, and the first player marker moves to the next character. Note, defeating enemies, completing missions, and gaining intel will help you unlock more abilities. Keep playing until the mission is over, and after each mission you will score war readiness points. Track those on this board, then pick a new mission and do that all the way to the finale. Why would you like this game? Mass Effect looks like a cooperative dungeon crawler, and I think if you get this game thinking it's a chunky dungeon crawler for a big group, you might be disappointed, because it's really a 1 or 2 player tactical skirmish game. It's a warfighting puzzle about breaching and clearing rooms, using sci-fi weaponry and technology. If you approach the game from this perspective, there's a lot to enjoy here. The character progression is neat and lets you try out new powers and combinations, and the missions themselves are nice and varied. And the individual loyalty missions are a nice touch. All up, I think this is best suited to 1 or 2 players who want a quick series of tactical puzzles to solve. solve. The best thing about this game is each mission has 2 win conditions that you can choose from. However, the game feels very arcadey to me, a little too lightweight and a bit like a phone app game. I think that line of sight only being in a straight line is simplification to the point of being silly. And while I think the game is solid solo, the character boards are the size of the map, needlessly making it a table hog when it doesn't need to be one. For a Star Wars map book game, try Mandalorian Adventures. And for fantasy, try Jaws of the Lion. Mass Effect. Kyoto and welcome to Robo Rally in about 3 minutes. It has no solo mode, it's a game for 2 to 6 players, playing time is medium, and it's a pretty simple game. Welcome to Robo Rally, where you must race your robot around a death maze and avoid lasers, pit traps, and your opponents in order to win fabulous prizes. Each race will have up to 6 checkpoints placed on the game area. To win the game, you need to move your robot onto each one in order. Everyone else is colluding to stop you from doing that. Card management. Each player has a deck of order cards to manage. Damage cards will cause complications too. Action programming. You have to place all 5 of your order cards in sequence at the start of the turn and cannot change them. Player turn. Set up the board with checkpoint markers on it. Each player then places their starting marker on the docking bay board and then places their model on that marker. Each player then draws 9 cards. They then choose 5 of these cards and place them in the sequence they want them to happen. Once each player has chosen their cards and placed them face down, you resolve them one at a time, starting with a player with a priority token. Let's run through an ideal turn. Here we move 2 places forward. The green conveyor moves us before the laser fires. Our second action, we turn right and let the conveyor carry us again. We then move forward 1 and the blue conveyor moves us 2 times and turns us. We then recharge to gain a power, right in the conveyor again. Aren't we clever? What really happens is we go last and the green player shunts us before we can move. This means we walk into the lasers instead, and even worse, the red player is moved by the conveyor, and as they are facing us, they shoot us. We take 1 damage from both these sources. Our next action is to turn right, which leaves us stuck in the lasers, and red shoots us again. All up, we have a miserable turn here. There are 2 types of damage. Haywire goes face down under your current action card. This will be locked in place and the action you must take next turn. See here for our second action. And the second type is spam, which stays in your hand until you play it. Once played, it draws the top card of your deck and plays that instead. Let's look at some notes. Yellow walls stop moving immediately, but don't do damage by themselves. Driving into a hole ends your turn immediately and removes your robot from the board, as does driving off the board. You'll respawn with some damage next turn. In order, the environmental effects go this way. Green conveyors moving robots 1 first, then blue conveyors moving up to 2 spaces if you stay on the conveyor. Spinners rotate robots 90 degrees in the direction on them, then lasers fire. Battery spaces give you 1 energy if you end your movement on them, as does the power-up card. Now the first thing you do on your turn is actually upgrades. You start with 3 in your hand and can pay 1 energy to draw a new one. You may also pay the energy in the top left to put 1 into play. Yellow cards are permanent and you may have up to 3, while the red ones are temporary, and there's a ton of upgrades in the deck. Why would you like this game? Robo Rally is an old game, and the version I have played the most is the 1994 Avalon Hill one, and this one has a number of changes, and I think every change is for the better, either smoothing up the gameplay or making it more chaotic. Because to me, Robo Rally is all about the chaos, and the more there is, the better. And that's the secret sauce that makes Robo Rally such a classic. It's that despite all the chaos, setbacks, and calamity, you can actually drive this little robot around the death course successfully, and when you do, it's very rewarding. This version has some expansions with wacky maps, including water spills and teleporters. The best thing about this game is pushing someone else into a pit. It's just top notch. However, if you love the live system and priority numbers from the old editions, you might not need this new one. It's more casual friendly, but if you own a game from 1994, you're probably not a casual gamer. Oh, and resilience. You'll absolutely need to be able to laugh at the game when things go wrong, or you'll end up wanting to flip the table. Richard Garfield also designed this obscure card game called Magic the Gathering. And for serious robot battles, try GKR Heavy Hitters. Robo Rally. Twonky's a murderer. Gold medal game. Kia ora Kyoto, and welcome to Shadow Moon Syndicates in about 4 minutes. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 to 5 players. Playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. The Shadow Moon is rife with crime, but its crime boss is dead. Can you emerge from the aftermath as the new ruler of the Shadow Moon? The game lasts for 3 full rounds, and in each round you will play 6 cards. The winner is the player with the most points, and you get those from completing objectives, operations, and controlling sectors. Card management. You will manage a hand of unique cards. Area control. You need more influence than your opponents in a sector to score points. Drafting. You can swap cards in your hand with cards from this display. Player turn. There are 10 sets of cards in the basic game, but you don't use all of them at once. For a 4-player game, use 6 sets, either chosen or at random. Take the 10 cards from each set and shuffle them together. Deal 1 face up here. This is the burn pile. Then deal 5 here, and this is the agent pool. Then each player is dealt a hand of 6 cards. You'll also get 3 objective cards, and each player less than 5 in a game deal 1 objective card face up here. Each player will start with 2 influence of their colour on the board, and there will be 5 operations placed on the board too. To control the sector, you must have at least 2 influence there, and must have more influence than any other player. You start the game with 1 petty crime operation token, and each turn begins with you having the option of flipping one of these tokens to gain its benefit. Here that is to add 1 influence to any sector. You then play a single card from your hand. Play that card onto the table and resolve its above the line ability here. Then check your discard pile. As we have an empty discard pile, we place the card into the discard pile and then resolve its below the line ability. On our next turn we play this card to the table, resolving above the line. We then check our discard pile. As this card is from the same syndicate as indicated by this symbol in the top left, we place it into the discard and then resolve its below the line ability. On our third turn, we play this card and resolve its top ability. But as it's a different syndicate to the top card in our discard pile, we do not get to use its below the line ability. On our fourth turn, we play a card face down to place 1 influence in any sector. Face down cards cannot be removed by any other effect, and they also count as all syndicates. So when we play our fifth card, we get to use both the above the line and below the line abilities on it. There are many different keywords on cards that place influence, move it about, and remove it, as well as manipulating cards in players' discards and hands. Burn lets you take the top card of any player's discard and place it in the burn pile, and some cards interact with the top card of that pile. Some cards like this one introduce different tokens to the board. For example, lockdown tokens prevent your influence from being manipulated. After you have played a card, you may claim 1 operation, which are the tokens on the board. You must be in a sector that you control that borders a token, and you must have at least a number of influence equal to the value of the operation. If you claim an operation, you must spend all your influence in a single region. If that amount is more than the operation's value, you'll gain a bonus credit for each influence spent. Operations you claim can be used for their ability on later turns. Finally, you may swap 1 card in your hand for 1 in the agent pool. At the end of the round, score 1 point for each sector you control, and 3 if you control the spire. Then resolve 1 of your objective cards, getting 1 credit for each operation claimed matching the type on the card, and 3 credits if you control the sector shown. For each of these you don't score, you may flip over 1 of your used operations instead. Then take your discard pile to hand, drawing up to 6 if you have less than that. Choose 3 cards secretly and put them to one side. Repeat this process at the end of turn 2. Then on turn 3, these 6 saved cards are your hand. The agent pool goes away in the final round, and each player's remaining objective card is placed above the board. Those named regions are worth 3 extra points to control, and if a region is named twice, it's worth 6 more. That means Spire can sometimes score 9 points. Each operation token type will also have bonus scoring. Just a few notes from me. I think of this game as a heist movie. Every card you play in the first 2 rounds is someone you are using to set up your big score, and the final 6 cards in your hand are your crew to get the job done. For me, it's about having 2 turns where situational awareness and taking advantage of a changing board state are key, followed by 1 final dramatic turn that you've planned for. And each syndicate brings a different feel to the game. Changing them in and out will change how the game plays a lot. I had so many fun ideas for Syndicate Powers too. The publisher limited the core box to 10, but after much begging, we have a mini expansion with 6 more syndicates coming with the Kickstarter. I think the game has a high skill ceiling and would best suit players who love some confrontation and love finding combos. I have another game out called Red Dust Rebellion, which you can see here. Shadow Moon Syndicates. Please support this game on Kickstarter. Yota Kyoto and welcome to Cellulose in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 5 players, playing time is medium, and it's a moderately complex game. You are a plant. No, seriously, you are. And it's your job to grow big branches and strong roots. Can you manage your water and nutrients to be the best plant you can be? As the game progresses, carbohydrate tokens will be added to the cell wall. When the cell wall is complete, the game will be over at the end of that turn. The winner is the player with the most growth points, which you get from many sources. Just look for the gold star leaf thing. Worker placement. You'll place your workers on the board to gain benefits. Card management. There are 4 types of cards you can use to your advantage. Player turn. Each player has a marker on the branches and route paths. You will start the round by collecting the income shown there. As the game progresses, you will move along these tracks. Each player will be on the track, and you can coexist in a spot. After collecting income, you will place 1 of your 3 workers on the board. Here you gain that amount of water shown on the left track. You may also place up to 3 of that water here in your coloured section, but more on that later. Large spaces like this can hold 1 of each player's worker. but smaller spots can only hold one worker. Each time you use a water or CO2 spot, the water marker drops to space until none is available. At this space, you can spend 6 water and CO2 to create a single carbohydrate. And if you have the resources, you can do it twice by placing here. This location lets you add a carb to the cell wall, gaining the points shown. Carbs can also be traded in for ATP tokens here. These spots will give you the red protein markers and orange hormone tokens, while the top space gives you the subtle first player marker and lets you draw a card. These spaces let you grow your branches and root system. The cost to advance to a new space is shown underneath, and it grants you the points in the yellow star once, and changes your income to the new amount on the right. You can also obtain cards here, paying the cost shown above them. Cards are not immediately replaced. If you have cards, you may take a card action as well as placing a worker. Starch cards cost you carbohydrates and generate lots of points and let you draw more cards. PSV cards have a one-off cost and let you reclaim one of your worker flasks from the board. Specializations reward points at the end of the game, this one for each PSV card you played. And enzymes have an effect when first played, then once you play any other enzyme, you may spend a protein to trigger the ability at the bottom of the card here. At the end of the round, the player with the most water in their area here advances their marker and scores points. This also grants them a bonus flask. Anyone not winning leaves their water for the next turn. Grey flasks may be placed in an area where you already have a flask. Reset the card display, then place one carb on the cell wall. Reset the water marker based on the symbol on the cell wall. Why would you like this game? Cellulose is a sequel to Cytosis, the worker placement game inside an animal cell. This time it's a plant cell, but the games share a whole pile of DNA. Cellulose is a silky smooth game that moves at a great pace. I was really impressed with how quickly it moved along. There's such very little downtime between turns, and I dig how the cell wall builds out both naturally and by player action, driving the game ever forwards. There's also just enough in the card play to be quite engaging, and building chaining enzymes can be really fun if you can get the engine going. Overall, a slick, well-designed game that leans into its theme really well and could be a staple for just about any group of gamers. The best thing about this game is the mini-game of placing water in the middle to get the extra worker. It's actually really engaging. However, almost all the game is very safe and sensible design work. Aside from the novel theme and the water game, it's all very normal resource conversion and worker placement. Nothing in the rules should shock or surprise experienced gamers, which makes it great for some audience, but those seeking novelty might be disappointed. Genius Games have built a great niche with their science games. Check out Genotype. And also, the original game in this series, Cytosis. Cellulose. It's growing on me. Kia ora Kyoto and welcome to Apiary in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 5 players. Playing time is long, and it's a moderately complex game. You are a space bee, part of a massive deep space hive. Can your beehive be the best it can be? The game ends after every space in the hibernation comb has been occupied. The winner is the player with the most points, and you get these from tons of sources. Just look for this symbol. Worker placement. You can place worker bees to gain the associated benefits. Card management. Cards can be used to score points or discarded for effects. Tile management. Each tile you claim goes onto your player board. Player turn. The game has 3 basic resources: water, pollen, and fiber, as well as wax and honey. Each player also starts with a random ship board. Each player has a docking mat where they store their workers. The workers have a numerical value on them, so keep them the right way up. The most common action you will take is to place a worker from here onto the board. Explore is the first action. It lets you move the queen ship that many spaces. If you move on to an unexplored space, claim its yellow token, then choose what resources this planet will generate. You also gain those resources. Different planets will have different rewards. Resources are placed onto available spaces on your ship. If you cannot place resources, advance on the queen track here for each resource dropped. Now when a third worker is placed here, the first player's worker is shunted off. It returns to its player board with its value increased by 1. Green also placed a 4, so they get to use the 4 space on the planet they go to, as shown here. When a 4 is shunted off the board from any space, you may choose to hibernate that worker. Place a hibernation token on a space and claim its reward. Then place the worker as a 1 beside the board. Grow lets you get new strength 1 workers and board extensions and upgrades your faction tile. These spaces allow you to build farms, hire recruits, and gain developments. The cost is shown at the bottom of each tile, and the row you can pick from is determined by the combined strength of the workers placed there. Replace any tiles picked from the stack. Carve needs a 4 and lets you spend honey to claim one of these special tiles. All tiles you claim go onto your ship board. Ship placement spaces can give bonuses, and filling up the board scores points. Convert lets you exchange cards and resources as many times as you have worker strength. A 4 placed here will let you teach a dance, which allows you to customize a new conversion rule. Research lets you draw cards and keep 1, and the 4 lets you plant 1 for scoring later. Instead of waiting for your workers to be shunted off the board, you may take an action to claim them. They go to your docking mat or landing area, your choice. Those in the top area increase by 1 and the others don't. Also collect income from any farm tiles you have, 1 per worker claim. At any time in your turn, you may discard a card for a basic resource or take the action on it. Why would you like this game? Apiary is a game about space bees, and I can't for the life of me figure out if it started off about bees first or if it was sci-fi first. Either way, it makes for an eye-catching and unique theme. The worker placement and upgrading system of Apiary isn't new, but I feel this is a really good and thematic implementation of it. To me, the meat of the game are the tons of various upgrade tiles you can buy and put on your board, and I love it when a game gives me a smorgasbord of options for how to build my game engine. Do not underestimate the utility of the seed cards as well. They are absolute game changers. All up, a very good worker placement game with fun engines to build and a crackerjack theme. The best thing about this game is Space Bees! I love this ridiculous theming. However, there is an official variant that limits you to playing 2 seed cards per turn. I recommend playing with this, as players can hoard and dump cards otherwise. The openness of the game can be a bit overwhelming for new players too. There's a ton to keep track of. The worker system is very similar to Euphoria by the same publisher, and Wormspan is by the same designer. Apiary. I don't want to be a pirate, but I do need your honey. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Cuba Libre in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode, it's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is long, and it's a pretty complex game. It's 1956 and Fidel Castro is launching his revolution in Cuba. Will he or the Batista government triumph? Or can the Directorio or the syndicates seize control for themselves? Each faction in this game has very different win conditions, and you check these whenever a propaganda card is drawn or at the end of the game. Area control. The board is broken into regions, and controlling them is key to winning. Card management. Each turn consists of resolving a card and the options on it. Asymmetry. Each faction has unique actions, units, and win conditions. Player turn. Take the 4 propaganda cards and split the remaining cards into 4 piles. Shuffle them together and take the 4 piles on top of each other. Then draw 1 card and place it beside the deck. This is the current card. Then turn over the top card of the deck. That is the next card. All 4 factions are currently eligible, and we look at the current card to see what order they will act in. Green is first, and that allows them to choose one of these 3 possible actions to take. However, green is also first on the next card, so decides to pass and get a bonus resource. Blue is the next eligible faction on the current card and can choose to take these 3 actions or pass. They choose to resolve the event, and that lets them pick either the shaded or unshaded text on the card to resolve. Yellow is the next eligible faction and must either choose to pass or do the action immediately beside the blue marker. Aside from the event, the options here are doing an operation, a limited operation, or an operation with a special activity. A limited operation is just an operation that affects only one region. Each faction has a list of operations it can do, as well as their companion specials. Knowing what your 4 operations and 3 specials can do is very important, but each faction has ways to get more forces, more resources, move forces, and attack. Let's do an operation and special. We start by placing down markers in all the areas we want to take this operation. Rally lets us place a rebel in a region. Lots more if we have bases. New rebels are added with their blank face to show they are hidden. We then use the black pawn to mark where we will do our special activity, infiltrate. We swap one of the police cubes for a hidden rebel. Later the government also does an op and special. First they transport troops from one city to this rural region. They then take the sweep operation, which allows them to find hidden rebels, flipping them to the revealed side. Only when a rebel is revealed are they vulnerable to being attacked and removed. Bases are always removed last, and can be shielded by having hidden rebels remaining. Control of regions, as well as support and opposition, is important for winning. To this end, rebel factions can conduct terror missions to erode opposition and support, and to sabotage and halt the government's economy. And the syndicate faction can muscle government forces into protecting their casinos so they can make money. Operations will cost resources, so mark that on the track here with your faction's resource marker. And when the board state changes, make sure to adjust it and the scoring track. Once both actions in a turn are done, move the ineligible factions to eligible, then mark the current factions as ineligible. Only eligible factions can act on the next card. Why would you like this game? I enjoyed the coin series enough to design my own game in it, so take my opinion with a big grain of salt. That said, Cuba Libre is the natural entry point to the series due to its relative simplicity and focus on the core concepts of the coin series. Later tiles can diverge substantially from the norm that Cuba Libre represents. The main great thing about coin is it's the best way I've come across to model irregular conflicts. When battles aren't all about lining up and shooting each other, it's about controlling territory as well as winning over the people or intimidating them into silence. As a result, this is a great game for any experienced wargamers or for other gamers looking at their very first serious wargame. The best thing about this game is once you know the basics, you can play it off the reference sheet. However, while each faction has a chance of winning, some have smaller roles in the conflict than others. This is because it's a historic game modeling a real conflict. Therefore, playing some factions will feel less impactful than others. Here's a shameless plug for my own game, Red Dust Rebellion. And for another lightweight wargame, try Shores of Tripoli. Cuba Libre, the red box of coin. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Hegemony in about 3 minutes. My version has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is long, and it's a pretty complex game. In Hegemony, you represent a class of people, or the state. Can you maximize the options presented to you to score the most points? The game ends after 5 full rounds of play, with each round having 5 actions for each player. The winner is the player with the most points at that time. Asymmetry. Each faction has different rules and ways to score points. Card management. There are many different types of cards to manage in this game. Player turn. Each player has a central board that tracks their core information. Each round you will start with 7 cards from your special faction deck. When it is your turn, you will choose one of these cards to play, either for the effect shown on the card, or you can discard a card without effect to take a basic action on your player sheet. You do this 5 times each round. You may also take a free action. Each faction has different actions, so instead of looking at them too closely, let's talk about what each faction wants to do. The working class wants to get employment at businesses for good wages, so they can earn income. That income is then turned into food, education, health, and consumer goods. Health creates more workers, education trains them, and consumer goods and the other two increase prosperity, which is the main way the workers score points. Having lots of workers in specific industries lets you set up unions, which grants you influence needed to keep government policies from harming workers. The capitalist class wants to start businesses but needs workers to make those businesses operate. By paying wages to the player who controls those workers, they will produce goods. They can then sell those goods to other players or export them. Either way, they are looking to make money on the deal. After paying their taxes on the number of businesses they own and their profits, the capitalist player moves their revenue to capital, which is their main way of scoring points. The middle class player is in between and can earn salaries for working at the capitalist businesses, or they can start their own small businesses and produce goods for themselves. They also score points through increasing their prosperity with health, education, and consumer goods. And the state player is trying to balance out all the other players and deal with incidents and events, while providing benefits to the other players in exchange for points. They also provide public services whose prices change based on policy and public sector businesses. As an action, any player may call a vote, and at the end of the round each vote is resolved. Each player decides if they are for or against. Then 5 cubes are drawn from a bag. You can use actions to add more cubes to the bag. Then all players secretly reveal purple influence cubes, and the combined best total wins the vote. That moves that policy. Right policies favor the capitalist and left the workers. During the game, workers will immigrate into the country, and new businesses, when formed, will take workers from this pool. The workers and middle class players can also move their workers to new jobs. Why would you like this game? Hegemony is a tricky game to review because while you can talk about it as a game, its publishers have chosen to market it as something much grander, an educational tool about how countries work. I'm choosing to focus on gameplay in this review, and for that, each of the 4 factions has their own puzzle to solve on how to maximize points within their role in the game. There are quite a few fun and interesting interactions around wages, prices, and commodities, and what the state can and can't produce. And for a group that loves complexity and interaction, there is some potential for fun and a challenge here. There's a ton happening, but I definitely only recommend it to very experienced gamers. The best thing about this game is its player aids. They make teaching the different factions a lot easier. However, I found the core gameplay lacking in dynamism. Each faction feels very limited in their actual decision space, and I found myself doing obvious move after obvious move each play. And at the end of the game, nothing fundamentally feels different than when we started. There's just more stuff on the board. It looks like a sandbox to explore, but the game's experience is closer to working in a 4-partition cubicle farm. For a far faster and more dynamic game, try Brass Birmingham. And for another big Euro game, try On Mars. Hegemony, status quo, the game. Kia ora Kyoto, and welcome to Star Tycoon in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players, playing time is long, and it's a moderately complex game. You are the CEO of an interstellar megacorporation. Can you acquire worlds, develop industries, and build partnerships better than anyone else? The game lasts for 4 rounds, each with 3 turns per player, with each turn having 3 actions. This is tracked using the marker here. The winner is the player with the most points at the end of the game, and you get points from tons of sources. Just look for the gold laurel. Reactive market. Buying and selling goods will change their price. Drafting. You'll draft cards from 5 different displays. Set collection. Collecting sets of similar cards is the key to winning. Player turn. Give each player a random Omniforge card. The player with the highest numbered forge will go first. Each player gets 3 corporations and chooses 1. Get the starting resources shown on your corporation card. You also get a random starting planet. There are 5 basic resources in this game, as well as energy and illegal goods. A card's cost and resources is always shown in their top left. At the start of rounds 2, 3, and 4, you will draw an event card and resolve it. Then each player does production. On turn 1, that will only be your Omniforge. But on latter turns, you will have planets with developments tucked under them. Gain the resources shown on each development card. Then each player will take a turn, taking 3 actions from this list, and you can take actions more than once. Omniforge is the first action, and it lets you gain the resources shown on that card. You can gain a single bank loan for more energy, but it costs you points and income. You can take a market action to buy or sell 2 items. For example, we buy 1 blue resource for 1 power. As we bought the blue resource, that shifts the marker right 1 step. We also sell 1 green resource for 1 energy. Selling shifts the marker left 1 space. At the extremes of the market, it can cost 4 energy for 1 resource, or you need to spend 4 resources to get 1 energy. The next actions interact with the 5 different card sets. This planet costs you 1 ship. Do not refresh the card row until the end of your turn. That's because you may only purchase cards from a full row. So if we took a second purchase action, it would have to be for something other than a planet, like this generator. Level 1 developments produce 1 resource, and level 2 developments have numerous different effects. You may also take an action to reserve a single card to your hand to purchase with later actions. Level 3 developments score lots of points, and they cannot be reserved. Each planet has a number of hammers on it. This shows how many developments it can hold. Place developments below a planet of your choice. New planets are placed to the side. Many cards, like this planet, have scoring goals on them. This one is to have at least 1 energy and 1 purple production. You can also claim one of the sponsorship cards, which gives you points for collecting sets. The final action is to use 2 smuggling moves. Smuggling is denoted by this symbol and lets you exchange resources for something else. Why would you like this game? Star Tycoon sets out to be a game about building a big space corporation, an idea I find quite fun and engaging, and it mostly succeeds at that. I'm always a fan of dynamic player markets, as it adds a level of soft player interaction that a game can't help but benefit from. For a game with a comparatively small box, it's utterly packed of cards and components. It's one game you won't complain about having a lot of air in its box. The resource tray is basic, but it works very well, and we ended up using it as the current player marker too. All up, Star Tycoon would suit a group of people who want to mix between a commerce game and a point salad euro. Best thing about this game is that you can only draft from full rows. It's a small rule, but it keeps decisions tight. However, Star Tycoon is really close to being a great game, but there's just something missing here. It plays a little too slowly, there's too much point salad happening, the illegal goods and smuggling are messily implemented, and it just doesn't quite all click together. I feel a great developer could make something very special out of it, but it's not quite there yet. For something lighter, try Roll for the Galaxy, and for something more complex, try Beyond the Sun. Star Tycoon, it's nearly there. Kia ora koutou, and welcome to Beer and Bread in about 3 minutes. It has no solo mode, it's a game for 2 players, playing time is short, and it's a pretty simple game. In this game, you are 2 villagers on either side of the river. Can you outcompete your local rivals and make the best beer and bread? The game lasts for 6 rounds known as years, with 3 being fruitful years and 3 being dry years. That is tracked using this marker. Your scoring cards are split into beer and bread, and you only count the value of your lowest score. The winner is the player whose lowest score is higher than the other players. Drafting. Each fruitful year, you will draft 5 cards back and forth. Contract fulfillment. You will spend your resources to make beer and bread. Engine building. You'll play power-up cards that work well together. Player turn. Start with the seeding phase. In green fruitful years, add in the full resources to the value shown on the left of the field. In red dry years, fill the fields to the rightmost value instead. The game starts in a fruitful year. Deal each player 5 cards. They have resources on top, the type of beer or bread they are, their upgrade power, and their creation cost and victory points on them. You will choose 1 card to play, and then pass the remainder to your opponent, repeating this process of alternating hands until you have played 5 cards. You may play a card on the table for the resources shown at top. If you later play another card on top of it, you gain the resources on the new card plus any matches. So here, that's a second water. You do not get the bonus unless they completely line up. Place all gained resources into your storeroom. You only have 9 spots. The second action is to complete an order. Simply spend the resources shown on the card's order section from your storeroom. Then place that card face down in either your brewery or bakery spot based on what type of card it is. You may only store 1 of each type of card here. The third action you can do is to place an upgrade down. This slides under the board where the board icon matches the icon on the card. If you do an upgrade, you can clean out your bakery and brewery, moving those cards to a scoring pile. Each upgrade triggers at a set time. Card phase, when seeding the board, when you store resources, when you bake or brew, when you clean out your buildings, or when you score points at the end of the game. You may have any number of upgrades in each stack. Once you have finished a fruitful year, pick up your place down resource cards and then draw up to 5 cards with new ones. This is your hand for the dry year. And while you do not draft back and forth in dry years, you still alternate card plays. Dry years have less resources in the seeding phase as mentioned. And the final difference is there are 3 random cards placed here, and you may take an action to play one of them instead, while swapping it with a card from your hand. Note that the water in the river never runs out. Why would you like this game? Beer and Bread is a lightweight Euro game very much designed for couples game night. It is 100% a two-player game. The combination of drafting, engine building, and contract fulfillment makes for a pleasant enough gameplay loop, and the game lasts about the right amount of time. I am partial to big wooden resource pieces, and the ones included in this game are a good size and quite fun to play with. Also really like how the storeroom on the map integrates with them. It's a nice touch. Hard to say much more than it's a pleasant Euro game for two, with a little bit of player interaction, but nothing remotely confrontational. So good for couples who don't like directly competitive games. The best thing about this game is the final scoring. I like games where you have to balance your efforts well to win. However, drafting games are rough for a first play as you have no idea what's important enough. And there's something about the card design that just makes my eyes wash over them without registering information. I feel like I would have enjoyed the game much more if these cards were more distinct and interesting. It wasn't until my second play I even noticed there were different types of bread on the card. For another great two-player game, try Seven Wonders Duel. And for a multiplayer game, try Village. Beer and Bread needs more spice. And Kyoto, and welcome to Cosmoctopus in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players. Playing time is short, and it's a pretty simple game. You are a devotee to the great Cosmoctopus, the tentacled terror that threatens to tear our reality to pieces. Can you summon its majesty first? The game ends immediately once one player gains their 8th tentacle. That player triumphantly places Cosmoctopus's mighty head on their player board. Card management. There are 4 main types of cards to manage. Engine building. Finding cards that work well together is the key to victory. Player turn. Grab the 8 normal realm tiles as well as one of the 4 special ones. Arrange them in any crazy format you wish to. But to make your first game more sane, arrange them in a square. Place the Cosmoctopus on the central tile. Then set up the Forbidden Knowledge tokens and the Devotee cards, with 3 cards face up ready to draft. On your turn, you must move Cosmoctopus, and it must be to an adjacent tile, not diagonally. You may also choose to pay 1 resource of any kind to move in an extra space. Then gain the benefits of the space you landed on. For the +3 spaces, that is 3 of the matching color resource. For the other ones, it is 1 matching resource and a card from the display. Each of the special tiles has its own unique power, and there is only 1 of them in each game. Once you have moved Cosmoctopus and activated it, you may then play a card from your hand. There are 4 types of cards shown by color. From left to right, they are relics, scripture, hallucinations, and constellations. To pay for a card, you must spend the resources shown on the top left. Cards can be spent 1 for 1 as well. The top type must match color, while the grey cost can be any old thing. Relic cards give you ongoing powers. Like this one gives you 3 extra black resources whenever you gain black resources. This 3 extra is regardless of how many the initial gain is. Scripture cards, once purchased, grant an ongoing discount to other cards. This one, for example, reduces the cost of red cards by 3. Note you cannot use colored discounts to pay for grey costs on a card, but you can use grey discounts. With these 2 discounts, this hallucination card costs us 2 resources and gains us 8 red resources. Hallucinations are one-off event cards and are discarded once used. This one, however, has a lightning bolt on it, which means you can play another card after it. We play another red card that gains us 3 tentacles. Constellation cards have multiple resources showing on them. When you gain a resource of the matching type, you may place it on a card in order. Once completed, you gain the bonus at the bottom of the card. If you have multiple constellations that can receive a resource, they may do that. If you ever have 13 of a resource type, including discounts, you may buy a Forbidden Knowledge to gain 2 tentacles. At the end of the round, discard down to 8 resources. Why would you like this game? Cosmoctopus is a cute and easy to teach game with very simple core rules and a gameplay loop that should be very easy to pick up. You move the Cosmoctopus around, pick up cards and resources, and play them to get ongoing discounts, events, or victory points. Real straightforward stuff. And despite the moderately spooky theme, I think this would be fine for a family game night as well. The victory conditions are also very straightforward and easy to explain, but the actual process of adding tentacles to your board is quite fun. All up, a very cute game that has a sense of fun to it. The best thing about this game is at the end of your turn, you must rotate Cosmoctopus so its gaze falls on the next player. However, if someone gets a good start and gets their engine going, there isn't really much you can do about catching them. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can make the game anticlimactic. And I'm not sure the core gameplay loop is going to keep many folks engaged after a few plays. It's pretty average in that regard. For another light engine builder, try Century Golem. And for something a bit more involved, try It's a Wonderful World. Cosmoctopus, mild cosmic discomfort. Kyoto, and welcome to Dog Park in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has a solo mode. It's a game for 1 to 4 players. Playing time is medium, and it's a reasonably simple game. You are a dog walker, trying to drum up as much business as you can. Can you become the best dog walker of all? The game lasts for 4 full rounds of play, tracked using the bird here. The winner is the player with the most points, which you get from a bunch of sources. Just look for the blue ribbons. Drafting. Each round you will draft 2 dogs from a central display. Set collection. Lots of points are scored by collecting sets of cards and resources. Player turn. Each round consists of drafting 2 dogs in the recruit phase, selecting dogs to walk, walking them, and then a reset phase. That is all tracked here. There is also a random card that changes the rules just for that round. Each player starts with 5 points and places their scoring marker. Place dogs equal to the number of players. Then starting with the first player, each player secretly bids points for dogs. You may bid for the same dog as another player. If only one player bid for a dog, that player gets it. Otherwise, compare bids with the first player to place, breaking ties. The losing bid takes the leftover dog. Pay the cost by moving your scoring marker back. Then reset the drafting pool and repeat the process a second time. You'll start the game with these resources. But let's act as though this is the second round and we have 4 dogs. The rightmost dog already has a lead marker on it to show it's been walked. Walking dogs gets you points and unwalked dogs lose you points, so we do want to walk them. We pay the cost shown on the dog card in resources and place them onto our lead board and put a walked marker on them. For the Dachshund, we don't have another orange ball, but we can spend 2 of another resource in the place of any other. And it has a special ability that gives us a toy when adding him to the leash, so we can now afford to walk the third dog. We are now at the walking phase. The park board is modified with one of these cards each round. We line up our dog walkers in player order, and each player may move 1 to 4 spaces along the track, claiming the resources shown in the space they land in. If you go to a space shared by another player, it costs you 1 point. Keep repeating this process of moving along the track until you leave it, with the players leaving claiming these bonus slots. The last player immediately moves to the end and loses points once the second to last player leaves the park. Most spots will gain you resources and points, but this one lets you draw 2 cards and replace one of the dogs in the drafting pool with it, while this one lets you swap a dog in your kennel, so not currently being walked, with one in the drafting pool, losing its walked marker, unless the action also includes this symbol. Then gain 2 points for every dog you walk this turn, and lose 2 points for each one unwalked. Why would you like this game? Dog Park is a remarkably pleasant looking game with art that is easy on the eye and a core concept and theme that is super accessible. At its core, it's a drafting and set collection game that doesn't do anything exceptional or new, but it doesn't really need to. It's pitched as a non-confrontational game for couples and casual gaming groups, and that's exactly what it is. It nails the fundamentals needed to excel in this niche and wraps them up in a beautiful package, a winning combination. That all said, the amount of ways to score points in the game and just how dramatically different scores can be says to me there is a solid core game here. I still think it best suits couples and casual gaming groups though, at least without the expansion. The best thing about this game is that they're all good dogs, each and every single one of them. However, while there's not much bad to say about Dog Park, it's also not a game that pushes any unique or interesting ideas in game design. It's a wonderful looking, but very, very safe design, and it might be a bit simple for some serious gamers. The expansion adds a lot more complexity, and we will cover that in a short. For something similar but simpler, try Parks. And for something a little bit more involved, try Raising Robots. Dog Park, it's a good boy. Kia ora koutou and welcome to Sky Team in about 3 minutes. Review copy used. It has no solo mode. It's a game for 2 players, playing time is short, and it's a pretty simple game. You are a pair of pilots trying to land a plane, a task that requires coordination and communication. In this game, however, you must do that task without either of those things. The game ends in a victory if you reach your destination at ground level with the plane straight and not going too fast. Dice. Each player has their own set of 6-sided dice. Secret orders. Each player rolls their dice behind their own screen and cannot communicate what they rolled. Action selection. Each round you will take 4 actions by placing dice on the board. Player turn. For your first game, use only the rules in this rulebook. The second book contains a whole bunch of additional content to be used later. Just ignore it for now. Play with the default setup that looks like this. Before your turn, you may discuss your plans, but cannot reference specific numbers. If there is a reroll marker on the current elevation, claim it. Each player then rolls their dice behind their screen, and from this moment until the end of the round, you may not talk. Look at the elevation track. The player whose dice matches the border here starts the turn by placing a die on an action spot. There are 2 mandatory placements, the first of which is keeping the plane level. This resolves as soon as both players have placed a die. Move the axis based on the difference between the 2 values. If you move past the red X, you crash and die. The second mandatory spot is the engines, and this also resolves once the second die is placed. If their combined value is below the blue marker here, the plane will not move this turn. If it is between the blue and orange markers, it will move once and pass the orange marker twice. Moving the plane moves this tracker down 1 step for each movement. If you move into a space that would push a plane off the tracker, you crash and die. We are now onto the optional, but ultimately also mandatory actions. The first of which is to clear traffic. Place a die here and remove a plane that many steps down the destination tracker. The pilot can deploy the landing gear. by placing a die matching the value shown. Then move the button to green to show this has been done, and advance the blue marker on the speed dial. The co-pilot does the same with the flaps, advancing the orange marker. All of these buttons must be lit before you land, or you crash and die. The captain also activates the brakes, and this must be done in sequence. If your speed exceeds the brake value on your last turn, you crash and die. Finally, you can use any die to gain a coffee. Coffee can be spent 1 for 1 to change a die's value before placing it. And reroll markers can be spent at any time and allow both players to reroll their dice behind their screens. Once all 8 dice are placed, advance the elevation tracker 1 step, reclaim your dice, and it is now the next turn. Why would you like this game? SkyTeam is a game that will appeal to people who buy into its central conceit of playing an aircrew who cannot communicate. If you manufacture enough tension on the result of your dice rolls, it could be an exciting game. There are a bunch of extra modes and airports to try if you enjoy the challenge of the game. I think this is something would best suit couples who can really get into the silent die placement and ham up the lack of communication. The best thing about this game is how it looks. It's very pleasant. However, I did not find this game had meaningful decisions. Half your actions are mandatory each turn, and the rest are usually very obvious. At no point in the game did anything unexpected happen. Sitting in silence, placing numbers in a predictable pattern is slightly more interesting than watching paint dry, and I personally felt no tension at all. In fact, SkyTeam seems so on rails it barely counts as a game to me. For a great 2-player puzzle game, try Assembly. And for a competitive 2-player dice game, try Noctiluca. SkyTeam, just put on the autopilot.
Shove that control into a nosedive, Hulk Hogan.
Kia ora Kyoto, and welcome to Clank in Space in about 3 minutes. It has no solo mode, it's a game for 2 to 4 players, playing time is long, and it's a moderately complex game. You are space pirates and you have the ultimate heist planned. Sneak aboard Lord Eradicus' ship, steal his artifacts, and escape. What could possibly go wrong? The game ends once all players have managed to sneak their way to a treasure, claim it, and then make it off the ship. Either that, or you run out of health and are eliminated. If you at least make it back to this section, your points are scored, and the winner is the surviving player with the most points. Deck building. You start the game with a basic deck of cards and can add better ones to it. Push your luck. The closest treasures are worth the least amount of points. Player turn. Each player starts by placing their meeples into this space. You then shuffle your deck and draw 5 cards. You may play these cards in any order, but you must play them all. The top left corner is its faction, blue is its skill value and is used to buy new cards, swords are used to defeat enemies and bypass guards, and boots are used to move about. This card is worth 3 victory points and costs 7 skill to buy. When you first acquire the card, it also heals you. And this symbol activates the bad guys. This other card has both an effect when you play it and an effect that triggers when you have another card with the same faction. When you're in a market, you may spend 7 credits to buy an item. These items include keycards and teleporter access. There are also these green hacking spaces. You'll need to place both of your markers on one of these in 2 different board sections in order to access the final board. Boots lets you move a space, and you may only move into this space once you have unlocked it. As it is red bordered, you cannot move any more this turn. Moving to a space with a reward in it gives you that bonus. Now this line has the foot marker on it, which means it takes 2 boots to move down. Now we can either claim this treasure now or move on. The next path has the lock icon on it, and we will need a key card to get by. The key card is not discarded. We also claim the reward in that room. And the next space has a guard icon on it, which means we need to spend a sword or take a damage. This space is a teleporter room, and lets us move to another teleporter room on the map if we have the access card for it. There's also a tram, which can move you around quickly. If you enter one of these spaces, grab a crystal. There's a limited number of these, but they interact with some cards. Every Clank card you play adds one of your markers here, although some cards can remove Clank. You can buy cards from the market by spending skill, or by spending swords on some cards. Once you have finished gaining new cards, replace them. And if any of the new ones have this symbol, resolve an attack. Add all the Clank cubes to the draw bag. Then draw cubes as shown on this track. Black ones are discarded, and the ones in your color go on your damage track. This track here advances each time someone gains their access token, and once each player steals a treasure. The top of the track has red cubes that damage everyone, and this marker, which blocks the tram. Why would you like this game? Clank in Space is one of the many Clank games, and it's the first and only one I've played. I picked it solely because I prefer science fiction to fantasy in most regards. Still, the theme works here if you don't mind the kind of cringe reference humor in the game, because the gameplay is absolutely killer. I've said it before, deck builders are at their best when they are a way to do something in game, and in Clank, the rising power that comes with the mechanic is counterbalanced by the game trying to kill you more and more as it progresses. So the game has great pacing. Starting off slowly, we have the whole ship to explore in tons of time, before the ultimate total panic at the end as you try to escape. The best thing about this game is that you can have the most points and the best deck and still lose because you got greedy. However, some folks will hate the fact they can be eliminated, and in general how nasty the game can get at the end. There's not much to do once you've escaped or been eliminated either. You do get to draw enemy cubes on your turn, but that's about it. Clank has multiple versions, and I'm informed that Clank Catacombs might be the best of them. And for another deck builder with some action, try Tyrants of the Underdark. Clank in space. Needs more hog throb. Gold medal game. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the notification button, like, share, and subscribe to the channel.